There we go. Good morning. Of course, a couple of housekeeping tasks. First, I just want to be sure that you're aware of the fact that this meeting is being recorded, video and audio. We will open with public comment, and public comment will be taken during this agenda item, but action may be taken on a matter raised under this item until the matter is included. No action may be taken, until this matter is included on an agenda as an item on which action may be taken. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes per person. Persons making comments will be asked to begin by stating their name for the record and to spell their last name. The council chair, or in this case, I will be chairing, and I'd like to allow additional public comment on a specific agenda item when that agenda item is being considered. In accordance with Attorney General File 00-047, as restated in Attorney General's Open Meeting Law Handbook or Manual, the council chair may prohibit comment if the content of that comment is a topic that is not relevant to or within the authority of the advisory council, or if the content is willfully disruptive of the meeting by being irrelevant, repetitious, slanderous, offensive, inflammatory, irrational, or amounting to personal attacks or interfering with the rights of other speakers. With that, I will ask, is there any public comment in Reno?
None at this time.
Any public comment in Carson City?
Any public comment? None at this time.
Thank you. Any public comment in Elko?
No, sir, not at this time.
Public comment in Las Vegas? Thank you. Today is the introduction of an important chapter in the history of our community colleges. Our promised link between the communities we serve, to the administration of our colleges, and to the Board of Regents Standing Committee on Community Colleges will be complete with this simultaneous launch of these institutional advisory councils. Thank you so much for your service. Following this launch, each council will meet and choose their officers, and the chair of each council will serve as an ex officio member of the Board of Regents Standing Committee on Community Colleges. The importance of this day and the mission of the councils cannot be emphasized more than by the presence of our keynote speaker. It is my privilege to introduce Dr. Walter Bumpus. I have been blessed to know with Dr. Bumpus for nearly 24 years, long before I realized a career in higher education, and while I was a broadcast executive in the private sector. Dr. Bumpus is president and CEO of the American Association of Community Colleges, which is the position perfectly suited for him, and one he has been molded for from the start of his career. Prior to Walter's ascent to the leadership of AACC, he served from 2007 to January 2011 as a distinguished professor in the Community College Leadership Program and as chair of the Department of Educational Administration at the University of Texas at Austin. He also held the A.M. Aiken Regents Endowed Chair in Junior and Community College Education Leadership. Prior to that position, he served as president of the Louisiana Community and Technical College System from 2001 to 2007. The system later conferred upon him the title of President Emeritus of the Louisiana Community and Technical College System. From November 2000 to September 2001, he was Chancellor of Baton Rouge Community College. Prior to joining BRCC, Walter worked in the corporate world as president of Higher Education Division of Voyager Expanded Learning. And for 6 years prior to that, he served as president of Brookhaven College in the Dallas County Community College District. Walter's history as a practitioner and leader in community college education has earned him a reputation for excellence from the halls of the White House to state houses around the country and the respective colleagues throughout the community of colleges. Dr. Bumpus holds a bachelor's degree in speech communications and a master's degree in guidance and counseling from Murray State University and a PhD in higher education administration from the Community College Leadership Program at the University of Texas at Austin. In 1992, Walter is recognized as distinguished graduate from both Murray State University and the University of Texas at Austin. He holds the distinction of being one of few leaders in the field of education to receive the AACCT, that's the American Association of College Trustees, Marie Y. Martin CEO of the Year Award, to chair the AACC Board of Directors, and to receive the AACC Leadership Award. Dr. Bumpus has also been appointed by President Barack Obama to several prestigious commissions and task forces. He was appointed in 2012 to the Homeland Security Academic Advisory Council, in 2014 to the Presidential Commission on Excellence for African Americans, in 2014 to a task force on sexual assaults on college campuses, and to a presidential task force of the State Department's 100,000 Strong initiative to encourage more U.S. students to study abroad and to attract 100,000 students from abroad to study at U.S. colleges and universities. It is my honor at this time to present my good friend, Dr. Walter Bumpus.
Thank you so much, Greg. Good morning. It's great to be with you all today. And, one of the dangers when you have one of your best friends in life introducing you is that he'll probably say too much, but I'm glad he didn't say everything he knew. Let me put it that way. To our guests who are with us and we're streaming to, it's great to be with you all as well. Frank, I was reminded when you were doing the introduction, I was hoping you were going to keep it a little brief. And I wanted to say they dropped all the charges, so no matter what all you read or heard, everything's clear. But it reminded me of an introduction that one of our mutual friends in Dallas, Texas did for me. It's been several years back. Wright Lassiter, who was Chancellor of the Dallas County Community College District, introduced me at a Rotary Club one evening. And my daughter, Fran, was with us, and on the way home I said, well, Fran, what did you think about my speech? She said, well, the speech was okay, but I found the introduction interesting. I thought, well, why would you talk about the introduction and your dad just gave a speech? And she said, well, Dad, it made me think of two things. Number one, you were awfully old, and then number two, you can't keep a job. And so I said, maybe some of that's right, no doubt. Well, folks, it's truly an honor to be with you, and to President Richards, I want to say thank you again for being here today and hosting us. I'd like to also acknowledge a gentleman he was in the back of the room, Dr. Paul Meacham, if he's still here. Paul was the first person I met. Mr. Woodbeck referenced my being at the University of Texas at Austin as a student, and Paul was really the first person I met when I went to Austin to interview for admission there, and it's been helpful to me throughout my career. So, Paul, it's great to have you here, and great to see you again. I can't figure out how you do it. You still have hair, and I don't. I had plenty of hair. I think I had an afro when I met you back in the early 80s, and now you still got your hair, and I don't, and I probably have a few more pounds than I did when I saw you then, too. But, folks, I'm delighted to be with you and talk with you a little bit this morning about what I call a national agenda for community colleges. Ken, if you're listening to me, can I get you to push the first slide up, if that's possible? Okay. Now the next slide, if you don't mind, Ken, because I'm going to move into what I consider to be a Camelot moment for our community colleges. And I'll tell you a little bit later today why I call it a Camelot moment, but these are truly the best of times for our community colleges. Mr. Woodbeck referenced some of the appointments I've had, and I'm honored to be able to say that I do believe, at last count now, according to my staff, that I've been invited to the White House about 13 times in the last 4 or 5 years. And I can tell you that has not happened every day in the life of an American Association of Community College CEO. But I think it speaks to the wonderful work going on out there across the country, and especially in our communities, as evidenced by the great work that the community colleges in this state are doing. I want you to know that folks are taking notice of what's happening in Nevada, following closely in terms of what you all are doing, and I'm interested in learning more. I was telling Dr. Richards this morning that I'm very curious about how you all are approaching this, because in my opinion, what you guys are doing is very symbolic of what's happening around the country, with more notice for community colleges, more opportunities for community colleges to make a difference. And we're generally very, very pleased with what we're hearing, I can tell you that. I have been coming out to Vegas quite a bit. over the years to visit here in this lovely city, but I've also visited and know a number of the prior presidents that had been at Community College of Southern Nevada or Clark County Community College, whichever way you want to reference it. But I was with Judith Eaton yesterday, and she was a former president out here. And had a lot of great things to say about the city and marveled at the way it's grown and the work that's going on over there now. Richard Carpenter, former president out here, is a really great friend of mine as well. So over the years, I've had a chance to kind of keep up by virtue of that college with what's happening around the state. I don't know if Marie is on the phone or not, Maria Sheehan, but if you are, it's really great to be in your state. She's another dear friend for a long time. And so I've often heard a lot about the great work that goes on in the state. If we can go to the next slide, Ken, I'd appreciate it. Ken, okay. Everybody in community college, everyone's working on what we consider to be the North Star for community colleges. And that's student success and completion. And that's a focus that we've all had. And perhaps you've heard about our 21st century report on the future of community colleges. But it is laser focused on improving the performance, if you will, literally transforming community colleges. And I'm going to talk about that in a bit as well. For far too long, we've heard criticism about community colleges weren't graduating enough students, weren't transferring enough students. And I can tell you right now that we're starting to see an uptick in some of those rates and the performance of our colleges. Ken, next one, please. We've had an additional 40,000 certificates that have been offered in the last couple of years by community colleges and 50,000 more associate degrees awarded. And in 2010, President Obama challenged community colleges to graduate an additional 5 million students, if you will, with degrees and certificates so that we could help turn the U.S. to its rightful place in the world order of having the most educated and well-trained citizenry in the world. Right now, I believe we're 14th or 15th, and we're making tremendous progress in community colleges, and I'll put in a shameless plug for our conference that we're going to hold in San Antonio in April, but we will be providing an update, a report card, if you will, state by state, on how our colleges are doing, how they're performing, both in terms of retention and persistence, but most importantly in how we're raising the number of graduates around the world, around the country. And so this is a great time to be in community colleges. It's a great time to have our colleges perform better. We've had far too long, again, too many of our students that entered community colleges that were going into developmental education, remedial education, and not finishing. And I'll talk a little bit more about a meeting we held in D.C. this week on a redesign of developmental education. If you give me the next one, Ken. The reason I talk about it being maybe the best of times for community colleges, multiple reasons really. I'm sure by now most of you have heard about America's College Promise. That's the president's proposal for free community college tuition for students, and I know there's lots of discussion about will it pass, and truthfully I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball on that, but I'm thrilled with the way it has elevated community colleges in the national discussion of higher education. In many cases, and I had an opportunity to appear on C-SPAN about 2 weeks ago, and I got asked that question, Walter, do you think it will pass with the new Republican-controlled Congress and Senate? And I said, well, I don't know, but let me say this. We've had the great fortune at AACC of working with Republican administrations and with Democratic administrations. And while sometimes the R's and the D's don't get along or don't agree on everything, the one thing they do agree on is that they love their local community college. And that's really been one of the pluses for us as we go over the hill and try to serve as advocates for our nation's community colleges. And don't know if you had an opportunity to read the wonderful editorial by Tom Hanks on what he owed to community colleges, but that was just a fabulous editorial. We couldn't have bought that kind of publicity, that kind of positive publicity. Same thing from Susie Orman. Same thing from E.J. Dion and the editorial he wrote about his mother being a faculty member in a community college. I was sharing with one of my colleagues yesterday, that's been very interesting for me, and it was a term that I can't take credit for, but we're having a lot of people come out of the closet and talk about their experience and relationships in community colleges, that they attended a community college, that they graduated from a community college, they worked in a community college, and so we're thrilled with that. There's been a White House Summit on community colleges. There's been a College Opportunity Day and a Day of Action for community colleges, and this is really sort of a first for us. The first White House meeting on community colleges was held in 2010. I was honored to be invited there, and it was a day spent on talking about best and most promising practices of community colleges. And it was a learning opportunity for many people, and it was an opportunity for us to talk about some of the wonderful things that were going on. Do we need to improve community colleges? Absolutely. But are we improving them? Absolutely. And I think there's no greater evidence than what you guys are seeing in this state with the wonderful colleges you have here. This week we had a national summit on the redesign of developmental education. I'll say just a couple things about developmental ed, and certainly not want to be critical, because for about 60% of our students, that's where they enter community colleges, by virtue of their test scores and diagnostic exams that they're administered. But Uri Treisman, who works in the Dana Center at the University of Texas at Austin, referred to developmental education, especially developmental math, as being a burial ground for the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of many of our students, and that we had to do a better job. And what I'm seeing across the country now is that people are not looking at students and thinking about how they can change them, but how they can change the institutions to be more reflective of those students and more responsive of those students. The other key thing is how we can accelerate students through developmental education. We are still the most affordable sector of higher education, and I think that's a good thing. But we've got to get students through our institutions and not burden them down with debt that's unimaginable in regards to how they're going to pay for it. So I applaud you all in this state for keeping your tuition reasonably low. And for many students, even though our tuition is reasonably low, that's not the only expense they have in higher education. They got transportation, child care, housing, and probably the one expense that continues to increase at a rate that I'm not real pleased with are the books they have to purchase. Books are increasingly expensive, so we're really trying to see if we can address some of that. The prominent role we played in training and economic development, and I want to compliment my friend Frank Woodbeck for the way he represented your state. I invited Frank to a meeting we had on workforce training and economic development, and we did it in conjunction with the workforce investment boards around the country. But it was an opportunity for us to bring folks together and talk about what can we do together, not in opposition to each other, but what can we do together to make this system work. People expect us to work together, and I think together we can make a difference. But Frank represented your state exceptionally well at that meeting, and a lot of folks really appreciated Frank's expertise in terms of what he brought from this state. And also Frank brought a wonderful background and understanding of community colleges. In fact, Frank served on our foundation board in Dallas, Texas when I was there. But Frank really represented your state very well for that one. I was talking with Dr. Richards this morning. He was telling me that this state had received several TAC grants. And that's another thing that was set aside for our community colleges. We had $2 billion that was set aside several years ago for community colleges, and we went through 4 rounds of that. But never before in my experience had we had $2 billion set aside for community colleges. I'm not sure where this college proposal will end up, and rarely does something get proposed in Washington and it turns out to be just like it was proposed. But if we can get elements of this proposal implemented, I think it's going to be a great thing for our community colleges. It's going to be a great opportunity for us to get more people in higher education that perhaps were not there before, and they'll certainly benefit from it. I often refer to our colleges as being an on-ramp to the middle class. And for many folks, it's the only ramp they can get to the middle class. And we're starting to see that on a personal and a professional level. I've had the opportunity to see the difference higher education can make in one's life. I'm from a family of 10 kids, neither parent having graduated from high school. And now now today, my wife and I both have our doctorates. We got one daughter with a doctorate, with another daughter pursuing a doctorate, a host of nephews, nieces, and cousins that are doing the same thing. But that's that ripple effect, if you will, of what higher education can mean. I think several of you are nodding, and I think you perhaps understand that and that difference that an opportunity can make for many of our students. I spoke about college affordability. The next challenge that we have, though, is the issue of college readiness. And we're still working to define what does that really mean. But we've had a meeting recently, and I'll speak about that in a minute as well, where we met with K-12 superintendents around the country. We brought in, I believe it was 14 community colleges, and I believe it was 12 superintendents that were identified by our counterparts, AASA, American Association of Secondary Administrators. But the executive director of that organization, Dan Dominique, and I started talking maybe a year or two ago about what we might do at our levels to maybe have an increased spotlight put on that, talk about the needs for us to work closer together, so we can see more examples, if you will, of students that might graduate from high school with a high school degree and an associate degree within the same week or two. And there are lots of examples of that happening now. But most importantly, getting kids ready for college by the time they finish high school, by whatever metric you want to use. Having more of our high school students not waste their senior year, and more of our high school students taking algebra and coming to the college prepared. Still a lot of work to do in that regard, but I think we're making some progress. The other hot button item has been transfer. And while in many states they've solved this particular issue, believe me, in a lot of states it's still a major issue. And we've got to continue to focus on how we can have our students transfer seamlessly from their community college to their university in their state, whether it's the research university or a regional university. If we're going to continue to try to keep that lower, we need to continue to find pathways, if you will, where we can have our students do that a little bit easier. Can I get the next one? So some of our priorities, again, have been to focus on trying to see what we can do to support the president and Arnie Duncan and the administration on the America's College Promise. But we're also, at the same time, working on the Higher Education Reauthorization Act. And I'm pleased with some of the progress we've made on that. Senator Alexander has been very open to working with us in regards to financial aid and certainly Pell Grants, which are so very important to our students. We're looking at ways in which we can continue to get ability to benefit back on the books, and ability to benefit of those students who graduate high school or didn't graduate from high school and still are eligible for Pell Grants. We're looking at trying to get summer Pell restored. I think it's 3 years ago they did away with summer Pell because of the price tag. But the ability to have a student get Pell Grants in the summer really made a difference for a lot of our students. A lot of college presidents and administrations and boards had that as a part of their strategy for ways in which they could increase graduation, they could increase completion by having students going to school year round. And Pell Grants were so very, very important to that effort. I talked about the college readiness and the joint initiative we've had. The next thing that we're working on at AACC is what we call our next big things. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more extensively in just a couple of minutes. But it's what we identified, I guess 2 years ago. I appointed a commission, if you will, of 38 individuals that worked about a year. It was made up of business leaders, university presidents, community college presidents, community college leaders, thought leaders, but also we included some what we call friendly critics, people who have not been that complimentary of the work done in community college, because we wanted to learn from them too. And we came up with 7 recommendations and 22 strategies. The very next year, I had 109 college presidents, chancellors, and business leaders involved in developing what we call an implementation guide. And the implementation guide was a companion piece to the report, literally a blueprint, if you will, for how you could implement those recommendations to transform your colleges. And so the things that came out of that report, the implementation guide, are driving what we're calling the next big things. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a moment. I want to talk about also why a leadership is so important for us. And you see expansion of our leadership activities. We're doing high performance team training where we're bringing in teams of college leaders, working with them, and I really appreciate the great funding we received from Lumina to finance that, but how they can become more responsive to driving their teams towards higher performance for student success, higher performance for their leaders and managers. And we're also providing executive coaching to presidents, chancellors, vice presidents, and deans. Anyone that needs it can call our office and get a coach or a mentor. And we've got probably now about 12 retired college presidents who are working with us on this initiative. But let me tell you the real reason that we got started on this leadership piece. There are 1,132 community and technical colleges in this country. 1,132. And since July of 2011, we've had over 650 transitions of leadership. Now, you can do the math, 1,132, 650. That's a lot of transition. You know, we kept hearing that there were going to be a number of retirees coming, and we're starting to see it happen, but no one could have predicted this tsunami of transition, if you will. I like to say that perhaps some of the 401ks weren't 201ks, we probably would have had a few more. So we've got a few folks that are hanging on before they retire, but unfortunately we've still got a few leaders that are not perhaps meeting the bill and are being asked to retire. And yet we still have a few other leaders who are taking advantage of opportunities. When there's one job that opens up, it usually draws 2 or 3 sitting presidents, if you will, and he or she might leave, and then there's a transition there. But it's safe to say that today we've got 650 different leaders in community colleges than we had in 2010. The pipeline is not robust enough out there today with leaders that are experienced enough to take on these new jobs. Quite frankly, I don't know what the numbers are like in Nevada. I don't know what kind of turnover you all have had, but around the country, for California, for instance, on any given day, they've got 112 community colleges, and I'm advised by their chancellor that 40% of those are in an interim status right now because of the turnover they're having in California. Now, that's probably the most extreme example, but states like Texas and Illinois and others are losing maybe, I'd say, 15 to 20% of their leaders every year. And so we've got to continue to make those opportunities available, but we've also got to have trained, well-trained leaders that are going to step into those jobs. Our colleges, our communities deserve that. And so we've got a lot of things going on in the leadership arena that you'll be hearing a lot more about. Ken, can I get the next one, please? The number one recommendation that came out of this report that I referenced was about increasing completion. Again, the North Star of what we're doing. And when we came up with this recommendation, I thought it to be very bold. In fact, I challenged the committee, let's come up with some bold recommendations. If we're truly going to transform our colleges, we've got to be bold, we've got to be innovative in our solutions. And when the group, there was a consensus around the 50% figure, I thought, oh my God, this is my second year at AACC, and I'm not going to last long with that kind of recommendation. And I have to tell you, it's been 3 years now since the recommendation came out, and I've not had one college, one president, one leader criticize that figure. In fact, I've had colleges come up to me and say, Dr. Bumpus, we're making such progress. We wish you had made the figure bigger. We wish you'd made it larger. We wish we could have a bigger goal because a lot of colleges are moving in this direction. Some examples of some of the actions that they're taking, they're creating pathways again so that they can be seamless in terms of working with our high schools, getting more of the students to graduate and come. The challenge we've got in many states, though, the high school population has declined. And especially in the Midwest, the Rust Belt, and some of those areas, the number of high school graduates are declining. And so the last year or so, we've had perhaps in most colleges around the country a flattening of enrollment, and in some cases actually a decline in enrollment. Now, there are some states where enrollment is still going up, but in many states it's starting to flatten out a little bit since the recession. I'll say this, 2 years ago we had 13 million students in community colleges. Today I believe that figure is about 11.7 million. So we're still now, I'm told now that people are forecasting an increase for the fall again. I don't know where Nevada is at this particular point. I do know that Community College of Southern Nevada, we are amazed by the growth you've had over there, my friend. It continues to grow, and kudos to you and your board and to the faculty and staff for the wonderful growth you all have had. Reverse transfer agreements are becoming very popular. And if you're not familiar with that, and it's generally defined as where a student takes courses at a community college, transfers, even if they don't graduate, they transfer, and that's one of the challenges with our completion rate. They transfer, but once they have accumulated enough credit hours at the university is working with the community college to transfer credit hours back, so that student can, in essence, graduate from the community college and then hopefully graduate from the university as well. iPads, and I don't know if you're familiar with iPads or not, and maybe you are, but iPads is the way the Department of Education counts students. Unfortunately, it hasn't been very favorable for us, and we've made significant progress over the last couple of years in that regard. But just in a nutshell, iPads does not count a student who has taken, it's only first-time, full-time students. I talked to you about this agreement that some colleges have with their local K-12 district where a student can be in advanced placement, they can be in a variety of different programs, but if they've taken a college course prior to their arrival at the university, they don't count in your computation of who the students you're looking at. And so in some cases, those students don't count for the community college and they don't count for the university. 60% of the students attending community colleges are part-time. So you think about that in regards to the number of students that are counted when it comes to our graduates. And that's a challenge, not making an excuse here, just giving you the facts on that one. So we've been working with the Department of Ed to do a better job of how we count students, how we count success. And I'm pleased with some of the progress we're making in that regard. Next one, Ken. The whole issue of college readiness is a big one. Again, we've been working with colleges and K-12 districts. Whether you agree with Common Core or not, that's not the piece that's important to us. What we want to do is work with these high schools to get whatever standards they're using, more students ready for the test they're going to take with ACT or SAT in regards to how their college readiness is evaluated. But we've got to do more in collaborating with our K-12 partners, and I know you guys are doing that out here in this state in great numbers. Next we can. Closing the American skills gap, and I've talked with Frank a bit about what you all are doing here. I commend you for the work that you all are doing in this regard, and it's something that we've got to do a whole lot more of. I work often with Secretary Tom Perez, Secretary of Labor, Deputy Secretary Eric Selsnauer, and in fact, Eric spoke at our Workforce Development Institute that we held in Newport Beach, California last week. And the Secretary likes to refer to community colleges as being that secret sauce. You probably have read his comment about that, but the secret sauce, if you will, in higher education, and helping to transform what we're trying to do across the country and getting more people to work and also getting more people better trained. We've been very involved with them on their apprenticeship program and are excited about what the potential is for that and looking forward to continue to work with the Department of Labor closely and our colleges around the country in that regard. But we're trying again to redesign student experiences to incorporate more work-based, hands-on, and technology-enriched training for them. And to the extent we can do that, we think we're going to serve many more of our students better. Next we can. Basically trying to redefine the college mission and the institutional roles to meet 21st century education and employment needs. That's our effort to really take a new look at our institutions. And I was in an audience recently and had Nick Pinchuk. Don't know if you all know Nick or not, but he's the CEO of Snap-on in Wisconsin. And he talked about the tremendous role community colleges play in getting folks to the middle class. And it wasn't a community college person drinking the Kool-Aid and telling us what to do, but it was actually wonderful and refreshing to hear from a corporate leader who was so articulate about the workforce training work that we do. but he talked about the need that his company had to have more people trained by community colleges. He referenced Gateway Community College in Wisconsin and the work they were doing. But he talked about the need he had as a corporate leader, the responsibilities he had as a corporate leader to do more in this regard. And that's the partnership we need. We need to have more educated and articulate spokespersons out there, not just from community colleges, but from the business community, talking about and valuing the work we do. And that's been so important. Nick serves as the chair of the board for Skills for America's Future. And I can proudly say I'm honored to serve on that board with him. But he and a few other leaders from around the country that work on that board. In fact, Penny Pritzker, the current Secretary of Commerce, was the chair of the board prior to her taking her position. So we've been very fortunate to have some great leaders working with us that understand higher education, that understand community colleges. I'd have to say to you the same thing I said to community college leaders that were assembled in Washington this week. It's been great to get this kind of recognition, this kind of exposure, but with that comes an even greater responsibility for us to perform. You can't just rest on your laurels with people saying good things about you. You've also got to make it happen every day. Every single day, we as leaders have to, I think, challenge our people that work with us. We have to challenge ourselves. How can we wake up every morning, think about how we can make our institutions better? Our faculty members do phenomenal work in the classroom. You want to talk about secret sauce, and you want to talk about where the magic happens. It's not with Walter or Frank or Michael. It's really with that faculty member, what he or she does every single day in that classroom when they're dealing with students who are coming to them in some cases unprepared, as we've just talked about, maybe not the most highly motivated. But how do we do that and continue to make a difference so that in a year or 2 years or 6 months, if they're getting a certificate, how do we have those students walk out that door feeling like we've really made a difference and a value add in their lives? And that's what's happening in this regard when we redefine our colleges. Ken, next slide, please. Support structures that are collaborative. And again, we're following very closely what you guys are doing here in Nevada. I'm very
Call the bathroom.
Dr. Bumpus, I don't know if you can hear us in Elk, but we've lost the feed.
Yeah, I think we lost the sound here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
We can hear you.
I sound like the Verizon man, don't I? Can you hear me now? I also sound like Barry White, Ken. Whatever you did, I like that. And I'm going to stop talking at you in just a couple of minutes because I really want to entertain the questions that you might have for me. But I talked about a collaborative structure, and I won't say anything more about that. Ken, next slide, please. Advocacy work on your behalf. These are interesting days in Washington. I'll just say that. And by the way, I'm so glad to be out here with the weather we're having. And it's not just because of the weather. I'm glad to be out here to be with you all. But we've been having some interesting weather there, both in terms of the climate, but also in terms of the work we're doing with folks on the Hill. Very challenging in some ways, but very interesting. I really love the work we do, and I find it very refreshing in terms of the way in which we've been greeted and welcomed in all levels of the administration and in government. But certainly a lot of work to do. But the more we can talk about the work we're doing in community colleges and the great work you guys are doing out here on the ground, that's what makes the difference. Next one. I talked about accountability, and I couldn't say it any better than saying we got to be responsible for our outcomes. We've got to be knowledgeable about our outcomes, and we got to be truthful and transparent in what we do. And I think if we can do that and continue to build on where we are, I think we're going to be well served. We're doing something at AACC now called the Voluntary Framework of Accountability, but it's our way of working with the Department of Education and others to accurately count and reflect the students that come to us. In the past, we haven't done a real good job of being able to track those students that go into the workforce or those students that transfer. And so we're trying to do a better job of that with our Voluntary Framework of Accountability. And we're working closely now with the National Student Clearinghouse to track accurately those students who enter our doors and the ones that drop out, stop out, come back and finish. When you look at our graduates or our students and their matriculation patterns with us, our students don't come and do 2 years and graduate, typically. We're called 2-year colleges, but that's a misnomer, to be honest with you. Our students enter our doors, and then some 3, 4, 5 years later, they finish, or they transfer, or they go into the world of work, and then come back. So you've got to look at a bigger picture. What we're finding now, if you look at a student and his or her matriculation pattern with us, and take it out over maybe 5 or 6 years, you get a much different picture. But that's the same thing at a 4-year school. They're not 4-year schools anymore either. It's taken 5 and 6 years for many of those students to graduate. Mr. Woodbeck referenced my experience at the University of Texas at Austin, and I am a proud UT graduate and proud to have said I chaired their Department of Education Administration. My wife still works there as an associate vice president. But the good news about that university was it's such a wonderfully rich university that we had many resources for our students. However, you cannot enter the University of Texas at Austin as a freshman unless you graduate in the top 8% of your class. The top 8%. And when you think about that's the only student you're taking, you know, it's a wonder if they don't have a 100% graduation rate. You're getting students coming that are highly motivated and highly successful, but yet their graduation rate, I think, hovers around 70%. So it's no criticism on them for their graduation rate. Now, that's in 4 years, I'm giving you that. Now, you probably move that out over 5 or 6 years, it goes up considerably. But when you think about our institutions, we take any student that graduated in the top 100% of his class. Okay, you understand the point. We don't have that selective admission, and yet we're now hovering around 40 and 50% when you look at it over 3 or 4 years, and it goes up to almost 60% when you look at it over 5 or 6 years. The key is not to cook the books or create false numbers. I talked about transparency earlier. The key is to be able to accurately track your students and what's happening with them, and to paint that picture. Is that adequate? No. Do we need to do a better job of it? Yes, we do. Frank knows our youngest son, Brian, and he calls Frank Uncle Frank. And Brian is an example of the students that we serve in community colleges. Our youngest son, Brian, I think now is about on the 10th year of his undergraduate degree. And if you don't have a Brian, you probably got one in your family. But Brian, after his pursuit, and I believe the last count, it was 2 community colleges, 2 universities, the Art Institute of Dallas, and we never knew he even enrolled there. Okay? And another institution, but his mother decided, and it hasn't been that long ago, that we needed to get Brian a degree of some sort. Now, he's a trained electrician, so he'll probably make more money than his brothers and sisters combined. But I believe she figured it out. He had 6 transcripts. Okay, so she was trying to, I'll use a technical term here, cobble together, if you will, enough credits for him to graduate someplace. And I say that jokingly because when you think about our students in community colleges, most of them have 3 and 4 transcripts. They're going to community colleges, they're going to universities, they're taking courses online. So it's not like it used to be when I'm older than all you guys, but when I graduated undergrad, I had 1 transcript. When I got my master's, I had 1 transcript. My doctorate, 1 transcript. It's not like that anymore. Our daughter, I was talking about Monique, who just finished her PhD at the University of Maryland. Monique took courses every place she could take them, just so she could finish her studies. Not undergrad, but she was working on her master's and doctorate, but she wanted to get out. And that's what's happening with many of our students today. What we have to be sensitive to are the needs that our students come to us with. When you've got 80% of our students working 30 hours a week or more, they got a lot of needs other than just what's happening in that classroom. And so our faculty and our staff have to be mindful of that. Don't give them nothing. Don't give them anything. Keep your standards high. In fact, maybe the expectations ought to be higher. But we need to be sensitive to some of those needs, transportation, childcare, and everything else. So that's what's also very important. College performance, we got to continue to focus on that and continue to have there be an uptick in student success and making sure that we're leveling that playing field for all of our students. And we can't just have one sector of our student body doing well academically. I'm going to reference the Aspen Prize for College Excellence that's given to community colleges that are performing at the highest level and also getting more people into the workforce. Schools like Valencia, Miami-Dade, Walla Walla, they have now got as high a graduation rate for their Latino students as they do their white students, for their African-American students as they do their white students. Hard work, I tell you, yes it is. But we've got to continue to make sure that we're not talking about not leaving no child behind, because that's a K-12 initiative, as you know. But we're really looking at how can we continue for workforce needs, have our students graduating at about the same levels. We don't want to have a large number of our students participating in our institutions or enrolling in our institutions, engaging in our institutions, and not graduating. I think with that, I'm going to stop and ask you, what questions might you have of me? Anything community college or anything that I've talked about? And Mr. Woodbeck, I don't know how much time we got, but I certainly wanted to make sure I left a few minutes. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bumpus. You know, you said some interesting things, and I'm probably more like your son. One interesting things that happened, I was in the top 5% of my high school graduation, but because I had a child, I decided to enlist in the United States Air Force. What I didn't hear was the collaboration, because most of us that are in the Air Force, like my daughter right now, she's been traveling and she's been taking classes with different community colleges, online classes. My son, who just got out of the Army, is now attending the College of Southern Nevada. I attended the College of Southern Nevada about 27 years ago, and so what's the strategy on helping those folks who are in that same type of predicament?
Fabulous question. We're working with the First Lady, if you will, and members of her staff on one of her initiatives. And it's really how can we, as community colleges are where more students from the military enroll after their release, after them getting out of the military than any other institution. And we've got a number of best practices that are being talked about around the country. Believe it or not, one of the major ones we're hearing about is coming from Kentucky, and they're trying to move forward with hopefully what can become a national model of how can we be more responsive. I'm told we're going to have probably 1 million military veterans that are going to be returning to our campuses over the next couple of years. So we've got to be prepared to respond to that, not with just instructional needs, but a lot of their out of the classroom needs as well. The point you made about having a kid is, I like to call it life happens, and life happens to a lot of us. And, you know, you don't plan for that, you don't prepare for it, but when it happens, you got to respond to that. And so commendations to you in terms of going on and getting your education and your kids' education as well, what they're doing. That's that ripple effect I was talking about, too. But nevertheless, the military veterans represent a large portion of many students that are coming back to college. And our colleges have to be ready for that. And look at not only, again, their in-class needs, but a lot of out-of-class needs, too, because some of them are coming with a number of emotional issues and other challenges that they're dealing with, and we got to be prepared to respond to that. Great question, sir. Yes, sir.
Dr. Bumpus, thank you for the presentation. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
We have a broad, diverse, and skill sets here in this new council. What do you see the role of a council for a community college, and how can we best help our students in the community college and faculty as well?
I would start by what you're doing today. The best thing I could advise, and I work with a lot of boards around the country, not so many councils because this is a little different, but I applaud what you all are doing. But the best thing you can do is the professional development and training that you can get about better understanding community colleges, better understanding both the mission of your local college and understanding perhaps the staffing and professional needs that they have, helping to collaborate with your leaders to set that tone of how you want to operate, what support you can provide, what understanding you can provide, and then understanding again some of the dimensions of what I call the leadership challenges we have, the student success challenges that we have, and being understanding and supportive. But the extent to which you can continue to learn, you know, and sometimes I've heard folks say, well, I went to college. Well, that was maybe, this is not your grandfather's Oldsmobile anymore in terms of what we're doing. Many of the students that went to college 10, 15, 20 years ago, most of them were full-time. Most of them didn't have the kind of diversity we have today in our classroom and our student bodies. And so it's a lot different. And so, sir, to the extent that professional development training courses, not for you personally, but just so you understand a little bit more about community colleges, I would recommend that first. But also a lot of collaboration and communication with your leadership. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bump, for sharing your experience in leadership and also the things that you're doing with initiatives throughout the country. I didn't hear you speak very much about the trades and apprenticeship. And of course, it sounds like your son, you indicated that he's a good electrician.
Yeah.
Could you share with us what role you think the community college should play in the role of trades and apprenticeships?
I did reference apprenticeship a little earlier and what Secretary Perez was doing with the new apprenticeship dollars. There's going to be, I believe, something there are multiple millions of dollars that will be coming to community colleges. Unlike some other countries, I think the U.S. has sort of lagged behind in regards to valuing and implementing a good apprenticeship program in many cases. So I think you're going to find community colleges getting more into that business. In some of our states where you have a lot of manufacturing going on, they're really involved in apprenticeship training. I was just recently in North Carolina and spoke to 2 community colleges up there, and they've gone from an industry where they were highly dependent on tobacco, then furniture, and now they're going towards other skills and needing other training, and apprenticeship opportunities has been very valuable to them. Same thing in Michigan. In the automotive industry and so forth, I hear a lot of those folks talking about what they're doing with apprenticeship. But I think you're going to find many more students opting for community colleges, not just to transfer, but go into the world of work. And I think you're going to find in that regard much more happening on the apprenticeship side. In fact, we're seeing probably a faster growth in the number of certificates that are being awarded than we are associate degrees right now. But in my opinion, it doesn't have to be either or in regards to what colleges do. It should be both and. And so if you ask me, I think a good community college, a great community college, ought to offer both opportunities for our students.
Dr. Bumpus, this is an elbow.
Oh, it was the voice of God.
All right. I wouldn't quite say that, but we might be a little bit closer to God up here on the high country. I have 2 questions that are similar in nature, and they might be of a political nature. How can we help to implement change in regarding the IPED statistics so that we can get credit for dual credit, because we're able to work collaboratively with many of the 10 different school districts that we report back to on the county basis? And second, how can we help ease some of the restrictions on the GI Bill, because it makes it hard for some of our returning veterans to be able to attend community college. As you mentioned, many of them work 30 hours a week. They can't complete a degree within 2 years sometimes with that. I have family members that are veterans that can't benefit from all of the GI Bill benefits because of those restrictions. Are those both political issues, and how can we help along those lines?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking such a great question and for your tremendous offer. The best thing you can do for us at this particular point in time, David Bain, who serves as our Senior Vice President for Governmental Relations, would love to hear from you with your offer of assistance. But the extent to which your college and your district and your state provides AACC with good information about what...
The conference is about to end.
That's the voice of God.
Okay. I keep hearing voices. I never know where they're coming from. Okay. But let us know about your successes, your wins. And Frank does a wonderful job of providing us with information. But continue to let us know about it. It gives us an opportunity to tout it in our various communications, but more importantly, in our packages that we put together for the Hill. We're having our National Legislative Summit next week in D.C., and you got trustees and presidents, probably about 1,000 people strong, coming to D.C. to get our act together and how we can go to the Hill with one voice. And what you just talked about are things that are so very important. But feel free at any time to email me or to email David with what you guys are doing and maybe even any questions you have in your offer. We'd love to have you help us with that. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Dr. Bumpus.
That sounds like that exit point.
I appreciate it. And one thing we will do also is the advisory council is concerning passing along information to the system office through your president, and we'll be happy to talk about those issues with our congressional delegation. Dr. Richards and I were just talking about the fact that we were there in Washington a week ago, and it was in part due to our congressional delegation's interaction, or intervention, I should say, that helped CSN get their HSI designation waiver this week. A very important move. Our congressional delegation is very much aware of what our community colleges do. We want to make sure that we keep them aware of that, so we're going to continue to make these visits to Washington on your behalf. I also want to recognize another distinguished guest we have, Sherry Zolko, who is the provost of Wayne County Community College, came to visit today and sit in and listen to what we're doing here. And there's a lot going on in Wayne County, I know too. So thank you very much for coming. With that, we're going to be breaking into our individual sessions here shortly. So before I lose the video conference, I need to go back into the public comment segment for this segment of the meeting. And is there any public comment here in Las Vegas? Elko?
No, sir, not at this time. Thank you.
Q. Reno?
No public comment here, and thank you very much to Dr. Bumpus.
And Carson City?
No public comment in Carson City. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much. With that, I think we will close this segment of our meeting. We are once again want to thank Dr. Walter Bumpus, who is obviously very much adept at advocating for community colleges and for us. He's well aware of what we do here in Nevada. He's going to be watching to see what else we can do and what else we are doing, and we'll keep him abreast of that. Thank you so much. We appreciate your attendance and appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Let's take a break for about 5 minutes, and then we'll reconvene as a group.
I hope the members of the council found this helpful. Lots of information. We will be starting with an open meeting law presentation in just a couple of minutes. So if you want to grab another cup of coffee, we'll start in just a few minutes.
My name's John Albrecht. I'm the General Counsel for Great Basin College and Truckee Meadows Community College, and I'm here to do a quick tutorial on the Nevada Open Meeting Law. And we're going to do this a little bit different than what we have been doing this morning. In your written materials, there should be a 3-page self-test, as I call it, and it's titled The Quick Tutorial on Nevada's Open Meeting Law. And that is 7 multiple-choice questions. I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes, and you're to answer them. Now, there's a cheat sheet on the back of the questions where I put segments of the open meeting law, and you can look at those. You cannot look at those. It's completely up to you how you want to do it. And I'm going to be quiet for about 10 minutes. You're going to take my test, and then we're going to go over it together. That's how we're going to do this. It's pretty simple, and we will be done by 10:30. So I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes while you take the test.
Already took the test.
You and I were
Homework.
were multitasking, right?
Yeah.
We're right into them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did it last night.
Circles.
Wrong.
Another 30 seconds and then we'll start. Half hour. What we're going to do is we're going to call on the different sites to answer the questions. We're not just going to work with the folks here at Elko. We're going to work with everybody around the state. And question one, we're going to start with Reno.
All right.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, John, we can hear you perfectly well.
Answer question one in Reno.
Okay, who would like to answer from the council?
Yeah.
B.
What do you guys say?
B.
B? B? That's right. Thank you.
Yes.
Aced it. Hey, Reno.
It's a competition, yeah.
No.
I don't know. Maybe we will keep score and we'll see how it works out.
Will it be
Any questions on B? On number one, letter B. You want to discuss it? Are you happy with it? You disappointed?
disappointed?
All right. Well,
discuss but not vote.
I'll say that again.
Dr. Poe was saying that there could be another option, which the option is to discuss it at the meeting, however, not vote it. Discuss it perhaps under public comment.
I would try to avoid that because...
Well, that's the purpose. That's the purpose of this advisory board, is to pass on ideas.
Right.
This way you say, well, you think of it three months from now when I have the next thing. Well, you've forgotten it by that time. And this way you can, even though you don't vote on it, the staff here could be thinking about it and implementing it, even though you don't actually, this is also legalized, that it takes away, to a certain extent, what you're trying to accomplish.
Sounds like a business.
Yeah.
There's difficulties with the structure.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. But and you can bring it up under adding agenda items to the next meeting. But I wouldn't discuss it at great length. I would rather say we want to put this on the agenda for the next meeting. That would be my suggestion. The question was, can we put it on under there usually is an agenda item that says for the next meeting we're going to have this as an agenda item, and you could say, I want to, for the next meeting, put my great idea, whatever great idea it is. I'm not saying it is or isn't, and we want that on the agenda for the next meeting, and then you could put it on there. Absolutely.
In the past, we've asked each member to come around, do you have anything to suggest? And usually it's nothing that's going to stand for a long period of time. But that's how you get ideas.
Sure.
And that's the purpose of this advisory board.
Yes, well, we have no authority to do anything other than advise. We can take action. We have no authority to take any action on anything.
And I think that might be a change that ELCA will, or at least Great Basin College will be experiencing, in that we've had an advisory board since almost the college was founded. We now have a more legal realm in which we can start making more actionable items. And so we can start acting a little bit more independent of the president to say, because we're reporting back to the regents, and I think that might be where Mr. Albrecht's coming in at, to say that we can make an action item to say, we expect the president to do this. Now, the president is free to say, thank you for your advice. You're an advisory council, and I'm going to take it under consideration and move it the other way. But I think now that we are a formal board or formal council, I think that might be where Mr. Albrecht is going, is that we can make that action to say, we don't want it to be advisement. We want it to be, this is what the community expects of our college.
Well, the difference between and we'll move on in a second, TMCC, the difference between what you used to be and what you are now, you used to advise the president and you weren't subject to the open meeting law. Now you advise the regents. So you're kind of like a subcommittee of the regents. So you are under the open meeting law. So that's the big difference. But yes, you can bring things up during the for action on the next agenda. Let's move on. What about ELCO? Let's do number 2.
Consensus seems to be A.
Yeah.
Consensus is A on number 2. And that's correct. Any question about number 2? Okay. Number 3. We have Pahrump, don't we? We have somebody in Pahrump? Yeah.
There are, and we spent the last 10 minutes trying to find the quiz. We didn't realize it was on a previous email, so I just found it, and so I can't. Can I guess? D?
We'll move on. Don't worry about it. Ely, okay. Did you find it?
We believe it's D.
That's correct.
Yay! We get a point.
Any question about number 3?
Mr. Albrecht, I do have a question in regards to deliberation. The definition as outlined in NRS 241.0152 says to collectively examine, weigh, and reflect upon the reasons for or against the action. Isn't any discussion on an item providing information or reasons for or against an item? How do we talk about it without deliberating?
It's a problem, man. There's no doubt about it, because the state Supreme Court has ruled and said members of a committee may lobby each other. They use that exact term. They may lobby each other, and then you get to the words of the statute, and it seems like you can't lobby each other. So my suggestion is, it's best not to talk about ideas outside the meeting, but if you do, keep it kind of general, and don't ask how the other person's going to vote. Don't try to get wink, wink, commit them to how to vote. But you may talk about ideas, but we prefer that you did them all in the body, because otherwise it looks like you're gathering votes for an idea.
Are we restricted from making a public statement back to our constituents in regards to how we personally feel on an issue?
No. Don't do that.
So that's not polling by saying, I'm in favor of this, and if it happens that our other 14 workers hear that.
You're pointing out a problem in the statute. Okay.
And I appreciate your legal. I'm not trying to disturb the legal definition,
but you see the problem with the statute is they want the collective discussion to go on in the meeting that's agendized. And at the same time, people are basically public officials, so they want to talk about things with, in the hospitality community, and you're free to do that. But when you start polling the committee to reach, the advisory council, to reach a decision outside the public meeting, that's the problem.
Thank you.
In this size board, rare that we're going to be in a situation where we have a majority. I serve on a golf course advisory that has to meet under open meeting law. Lots of times, if there's 3 of us in the meeting, 2 are going to carry a vote. So I'd be really careful if you and I are.
There's a question about
comes to majority.
Yeah, there was a question here about social events, and the statute specifically exempts social events. So it's not a meeting if a majority of a quorum of the advisory council happens to be on the golf course together. You didn't have a meeting.
But those would be times when you really have to be careful, because you could be construed easily as.
Right. So you
Rotary being a social event?
Yeah, I would call it. I'm a Rotarian. I would call it a major social event. Yeah, sure. Okay, have we? What side have I not gone to?
We're on question 4.
Pardon me? What side?
Back to
Back to
Readiness.
Battle Mountain. Battle Mountain. Number 4. What do you say?
Number 4, I believe the answer is A.
Yep, A. Any discussion about that one? That's correct. It's not only that it wasn't noticed up, but this will not be important for advisory councils, but there's a specific section on if a public body is going to consider the character, professional competence, a couple other things about an individual, you have to give them particular notice. So I would stay away from this sort of thing unless it's specifically marked, and I help the council give the specific notice to the person. Any more questions on number 4? Okay. Winnemucca, number 5.
Go with A.
Okay, any other, well...
Any other answers? And C. Any other
Is there anybody else want to talk about number 5?
I'm not going to go with A.
Yeah, it's C. It's a little bit odd. You're not an elected body, you're an appointed body, so you can act with a majority of a quorum. Right? It's not a big deal, but you can take votes and pass them that are just a majority of the quorum. Elected bodies like school boards have to have a majority of the actual membership vote in favor of a motion. Not a big deal, just something that you're a little unique. And some of you may be on other elected boards. And if you are, this council is different. Going back to Reno, number 6.
C.
C.
This is how C. Oh.
The answer is C.
Lou. Yes, Will. What do you say to number 6, Reno? TMCC.
The answer is C. What is C? Is Jeopardy?
If you remember back to the very beginning of this entire meeting, Mr. Woodbeck said, I want to remind everyone that the meeting is recorded. And the actual recording is kept for a year, has to be kept for at least a year. And it is a public document. It's a public document. It happens to be transcribed, which it's unlikely yours will be, but the entire recording is a public document as well. The audio recording is a public document. Number 7, Elko.
A.
Thank you. Number 7 is A. You kind of got a limited discussion item. You could have broadened the agenda notice a little bit and said, we're going to discuss multiple areas of adding new certificates for the college, or recommending adding new certificates. Then you could broaden that discussion. But the way it's worded is limited to one particular item. I promised you we'd wrap this up. What's important? Can you show the screen? Here we go. This is a summary. Post an agenda, stick to the agenda, deliberate only during the meetings, and record the meetings. That's a summary of the entire thing. If you'll see at the beginning, on page 1, I gave you my contact information, and I am the attorney, general counsel to Great Basin College and to TMCC. If you shoot me an email on this, I'll answer it. I'm reasonably promptly in answering emails. It's better to email me than phone calls, but if you want to call me, my phone number is there as well. That's my direct line. I'm the only one that answers that phone. So you can call me up and ask me a question, or you can shoot me an email. And with that, I'll let you open the meeting up for what happens.
Thank you, Mr. Albright. For Great Basin College, are there any questions in the centers? Great. Are there any questions out of TMCC?
We have no questions, and thank you so much, John.
My understanding is that at this time, TMCC, we will lose that fee. Thank you very much for joining us, and we wish you luck as an advisory council.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll take another couple of minute break.
All right, we'll go right into our official roll call. Nadine.
Mashana Squaga. Here. Chris Bender is excused. Marissa Brown. Here. Tracy Davis is excused. Michael Hernandez.
Present.
Collie Hutter.
Present.
Mike Kazmierski.
Present.
Knudsen is excused. Nancy McCormick.
Present.
John Thurman.
Present.
Bradley Woodring.
Present.
And ex officio Ron Marstan.
Here.
Donna Clifford.
Here.
Henry Sosnowski.
Here.
And Stephanie Previst.
Here.
Okay, thank you very much. My responsibility at this time is to just give you a quick highlight of the role and responsibility of the council members. So we have tried not to overwhelm you with a lot of information, so you have certainly received already the charge for the council, but just let me go back to highlight a couple of things. This council had its origin or beginning with Senate Bill 391. At that time, community colleges in the last session were under review with respect to our governance structure and how we were responding to workforce needs. So the governance structure recommendation at the time was to move community colleges outside of the Nevada system of higher education under the Department of Education. That is not a bill that was successful, but what did come out of it is that there should be a study of both of those areas of governance and how we were responding to the workforce needs. There was a grueling number of meetings, and I just want to give an acknowledgement to the chair of our faculty senate who withstood a big grueling on our behalf in response to the committee's pretty in-depth and critical questions of how community colleges were serving workforce needs, etc. And so the response then was what we could do with each community college could establish an advisory council, and you are now the duly appointed members of that council. Each of us has one, each community college has one, and you know that whoever's elected today to serve as your chair will be your spokesperson to the Board of Regents and will represent the issues and concerns of TMCC. The broad range of areas that you will look at are listed on the Institutional Advisory Council webpage, and then you all had your photos taken for that. And I hope that you will give us your bio information if you haven't already, so that you can contact each other. There's a little contact sheet info piece in your packet. If you could complete that, that would be wonderful. This information will be kept confidential, but will be an opportunity for you to talk without doing any of the things to break the open meeting law that was discussed earlier. You are your names and probably emails will be on the website. Any member of the public can contact you. Any member of the faculty or staff can contact you. I would just ask if there are questions that you let me know, and I can help in the response. We have some wonderful colleagues that you will hopefully meet in depth at our next meeting. But let me just go through a couple more items that I think are significant in terms of your role. So in the packet that we sent you, we have the full set of information on the establishment of the council. It is critical. One of the first areas of responsibility is to serve as a liaison between the college and area employers in order to facilitate assessment of employment, training, and educational needs in the service area. And that is what the Legislative Committee was really focusing in on. Our community colleges, is our community college truly serving the needs that you all see? The other area that I thought was significant was to respond to requests from the Chancellor and the Board of Regents on our behalf with questions that they may have, and then to promote the college's programs and services among the community and constituencies that you are a part of. So that's it in a nutshell in terms of a very quick review in terms of what the scope and responsibility will be for the council members. Are there any questions before we go on to do a little bit more work? I am chairing this until we establish who will be the chair of this council. No questions on the responsibility? Okay. I'm going to be communicating with each of you on a regular basis in terms of almost everything that we do at the college, because you can see the scope and range of responsibilities that you have as council members is fairly significant. We don't have time to really introduce everybody in the audience. You're going to meet two of our colleagues a little bit later in the presentations on budget and a pretty much of an overview of who we are at TMCC. But I do see our Dean of Students, Estela Gutierrez, and so Estela waved, and so we will meet other members of the staff soon. Our ex officio members, and I'll have a recommendation about how I would like for you to meet them at our next meeting, because they have valuable information to present to you, and I like for us to begin with our students. Who are they? And so our ex officio members know our students inside out, front line. And so I would like that maybe to be a suggestion for an agenda item. At this time, I would like for the members to introduce themselves in a 2 to 3 minute introductory piece that would allow all of the members to get a better sense of your connection to TMCC or community colleges in general. And I'd like to start with Marissa Brown, Workforce and Clinical Services Director Nevada Hospital Association. Marissa.
Good morning, and I'm really excited to be a part of this advisory council. My name is Marisa Brown. I'm the Workforce and Clinical Services Director at the Nevada Hospital Association, and I've been a nurse for 33 years now, done a variety of different things. I've been with the Hospital Association now for a little over 5 years. Our connection mainly with TMCC is I run 2 workforce grants, one in the north and one in the south, with funding from Nevada Works up here and Workforce Connections in the south. And the stream of funding actually comes from Dieter. And we provide supportive services and training, as well as find employment for new graduate nurses and other allied healthcare professions. So we are constantly looking for programs to improve employment and engage employers to employ them, and work very closely with TMCC on that piece too. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Michonne.
My name is Michonne Esquaga, and I think most of you probably know me from my history at John Esquaga's Nugget, where I served as CEO. But really my connection, I think, to this is more in my role with the Washoe K-12 Education Foundation, which was started 3 years ago at the request of Heath Morrison, who was superintendent at the time, to bring together a group of individuals in the community to raise private monies for the public school district. I currently chair that group, and in the last 3 years we've funded programs like Parent University, which is a program that targets hard-to-reach parents and gives them skills to help guide their students to success from early age through high school graduation. That has been very successful, and again really promotes literacy, math skills, as well as making sure that your child is college ready and career ready by the time they graduate from high school. Also, a significant program that we've helped fund is the Signature Academies, which are programs going into the high schools that give kids options beyond the typical 4-year university route. And through all of this, the reason why I mention that is that it's become very clear to us on the foundation board how important it is for these handoffs, whether it's a handoff from middle school to high school to community college, high school to university. We see that there's just a real opportunity for strategizing between the community college and K-12, especially around the Signature Academies, the technical high school, and taking advantage of the opportunities that are coming to our area and getting these kids to where they're really teed up to be a part of that success. So thank you. I look forward to this.
Thank you very much. Nancy.
Thank you. Good morning. Nancy McCormick. I'm Vice President of Business Retention, Expansion, and Workforce Development for EDON, where I've been for the past 2.5 years. Prior to that, I retired from AT&T as an executive with them. My role in the EDON capacity is really to meet with existing primary companies in the region to provide them with whatever type of assistance they may need to succeed, grow, expand, and create new jobs in the area. Part of that is identifying what their workforce needs are, connecting them with the appropriate resources, and we have had many interactions with TMCC as our different employers in different industry clusters have come to us asking for assistance in connecting up with current and future workforce development programs to ensure that they will have a pipeline of workers as they launch their businesses here, and for those that have been here as they continue to expand and grow their businesses. And those needs may be everything from the entry-level worker to the senior executive level. So I am, for the most part, meeting with about 180 of these companies every year, one-on-one, face-to-face, to really identify what their business is, what they do, what types of jobs they have, and what types of skills are needed in order for their employees to be successful. Thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you very much. John.
Good morning. John Thurman, CEO with Nevada Works. We are the local Workforce Investment Board currently under the Workforce Investment Act, soon to become the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which was just passed this last July. Our role in all of this is to certainly oversee those federal dollars and the service providers that ultimately receive those, that do workforce development services. TMCC, WNC, and Great Basin College all are huge partners with us, if not as direct recipients of the funding, but maybe most importantly as ultimately the training providers for individuals that are seeking occupational skills training to improve their workforce positions. So we are very excited about this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Brad.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sheehan. Brad Woodring, I'm the Manager of Economic Development for NV Energy. I kind of have a trifecta approach to TMCC. First of all, 2 of my 3 older children are graduates of this institution, have gone on to be gainfully employed. Thank God. And a lot of it, and one actually owns her own business because of her start here. Secondly, in my work, everyday work as Manager of Economic Development, I always say that without an educated workforce, I don't have a job. And that just goes back to what Nancy was talking about and finding that. And I know that in the ability that I've had in bringing new companies here and utilizing state and local incentive programs and other workforce programs, TMCC has always been at the center of my focus because of the great job they do here in all aspects in all of their schools and all of their professors and educators. And finally, I am the current president of the TMCC Foundation Board. My goal in that role, and I think I've been involved with this board for 6 years. This is my home away from home. You'll find me here probably once a week, just to getting to know more and more about the college campus. But my goal, more importantly for TMCC right now, as president of the foundation board, is to bring business to campus and bring the campus to businesses. And we've started on that vein with Jim News Group and the Applied Sciences, and out visiting some manufacturers. And my goal in that is, as we go through and with this advisory board, is to get more and more acknowledgement of the college campus by local business and more businesses involved with the campus so they can see the great things we're doing here, and where those gaps that we talked about earlier in the presentation are seen, that business comes to us and helps us develop those entities that will provide the gap solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Mike.
Mike Kazmersky with EDON. The economic development success of this region depends in large part upon the success of this institution, Truckee Meadows Community College, and our connection to business and business needs. We will have, and if most of you have seen the numbers, more job opportunities than people in this community in the next 5 years, which gives this community an incredible opportunity across the board to upgrade their skills and get jobs, especially in the advanced manufacturing sector, that pay between $60,000 and $80,000 a year once they get in and work for a while. If we're not connected and working to support this institution and really all the community colleges in that transition, we will fail to meet the employer needs, and I think we will fail as a community. So it's incredibly important that we do that.
Thank you, Mike. Collie.
Hello, I'm Collie Hutter, and I'm president of ClickBond Incorporated, a manufacturing company located in Carson City. We have been ClickBond for about 27 years, follow on from my husband's and I first company, which was Physical Systems, and still lives as a research company. But we have 300 people manufacturing in Carson City, and I got involved in workforce development and an interest in this when I realized our company was growing, and as we were turning it over to our next generation, where was my future workforce coming from? And as a longtime board member of the National Association of Manufacturers, I was aware of the Institute, the Manufacturing Institute in Washington, which studies workforce development, and their programs for states and regions for developing local workforce. So about 7 years ago, I brought Dream It, Do It, a program for learning about our workforce and how we can grow workforce, hopefully starting at about the 3rd grade in STEM education. And learning in this, before that I hadn't really thought about workforce. I hadn't thought about community colleges. And so over the years, I've learned an awful lot, and the key of the entire thing is it's the middle skills we need. There is a shortage in this country. The Manufacturer Association sees about 700,000 jobs going unfilled because of the lack of skills. So it's not a local issue. It's all over the country, but we need to solve it. As Mike Krasmierski said, we need to do it because we have these new companies coming in. Where is that workforce coming from? So it is critical. And so Dream It, Do It continues. It's a manufacturing-based group in Carson City and also in Washoe County, and we're going all over the state in trying to develop the pathways, develop the curricula that we need, and working with our community colleges all over the state. And actually, Maria and I started out very well. I think it was about 3 years ago. My first time I worked with Truckee Meadows, we made 60 minutes with our Right Skills Now program, which is still continuing, and which we are very excited to continue that partnership with the Manufacturers Association in the state, Dream It, Do It Nevada, the National Association of Manufacturers, to really build a workforce here for manufacturing, but also because many of the skills are transferable, so that many other industries are going to gain from what we do for manufacturing. Thank you.
Kali, thank you so much. Mike.
Good morning, and Dr. Sheehan, thank you for the invitation to be a part of the council. I'm the fire chief for the city of Reno. I manage an organization of about 250 individuals, about a $40 million budget. The fire department is an all-hazard, full-service department. There is not an emergency that we will not respond to, whether it's someone trapped, a fire, an emergency medical incident, any type of rescue whatsoever, a mass casualty incident, disaster such as an earthquake. We have a very unique perspective as an organization on the educational system because we see, we look at it from a different perspective. We see the outcome of the failures that are a part of, when someone drops out, for example, we see where they end up because we typically respond to those calls for service, and we see the successes of the organization because most of those folks become employed and start businesses. And Mike Kazmierski brings businesses to our community, but they have to come through our system in terms of the permitting process and the licensing process. So we see, we're part of that global picture. And I think he said it very well when he said we're all connected, starting from K-12 all the way, to a 4-year degree. Personally, I stress to my organization that we're just not a part of our districts. We've become a part of our districts. We engage in our districts. Many of our stations adopt schools. Jesse Beck, for example, we have a crew that goes out there every Wednesday, and they don't do anything but just sit and mentor kids during their lunch break and recess. Their principals reported to us that their bullying has gone down. Their engagement with the students has gone up. They look forward to the firefighters coming to visit them. I personally have a deep commitment to, and I feel I'm a relatively vocal advocate for education as a whole, K through 12, as well as higher level institutional learning, because we were having this discussion earlier. We have the potential to lose entire generations. And I believe that Nevada as a state, and most especially northern Nevada, we've turned a corner. And Mike and his organization and the community as a whole are luring greener businesses, tech businesses, and we can only do so much. And unless we have that foundation, we're going to hit that wall where we can entice them all we want, but they don't have the employees to fill those spots. And then it speaks to the global quality of life in northern Nevada. I mean, when you start luring businesses, people say, okay, I want to look at your high schools, I want to look at your colleges, I want to look at your arts and culture. What is it that as well as being a great place to work, what is it for me on a personal level that wants me to relocate to Reno or bring my business to Reno? So again, when he said we're connected, we truly are. I mean, it's one big circle, and right now some of the pieces need to be polished up and connected a little better. So, but thank you for the opportunity to be on this board.
Mike, thank you so much, and I hope this has given members of the council an opportunity to know what a dynamic group we have here. We're very excited, and we thank you so much for your willingness to serve. The 3 members that were not able to be with us will hopefully be able to attend at the next meeting. At the end of the table is the dynamic Nadine Winslow. So she will be backing up, taking minutes, and there to assist at every turn. We're also very lucky to have a student government. Sometimes it's active and sometimes it's not, but it always depends on its leadership. We are so excited to have Stephanie Prevost, who is the president of our Student Government Association. And as soon as this meeting's over, I know she's going to another event that is Student Week, and so lots going on and wonderful activities, a lot of energy in the leadership of provided by Stephanie Prevost. So thank you. Next to Stephanie is the Faculty Senate Chair, Ron Marston, who's also Professor of Graphic Arts. If there is any task in the world that's more difficult than Chair of Senate, I don't know what it is. So he is the diplomat extraordinaire and has been very involved in workforce in his area of graphic arts. So we thank Ron for his participation. At the very end, we see Donna Clifford, who is involved and has been chairing president now of our Senate Classified Council. It's very much a parallel to Senate, our Classified Council. And she has been here for many years and can remember when something very similar to this body did exist. And so she's frontline, knows what students need, and we're very pleased to have her serving. Next to her is Professor Sosnowski, Henry Sosnowski. I almost got that right. But
you got it.
Henry has been doing a deep dive into the specific needs of our students. And so an agenda item that I hope you will agree to is let's take a deep dive into what our student profile looks like from a student point of view, from the professor's point of view, and from the point of view of first-line classified staff. With that, I'd like to go to public comment. That's on our agenda. Is there any public comment at this time? Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll go on to 2 very short agenda items, and we've abbreviated them because we want to get to the real critical issue of selection, nomination and selection of the chair and vice chair of this body. But first, a little bit of an overview. And so Dr. Kyle Dalby is Chief of Staff and works in my office, and he's going to give you a bit of an overview, and that will be followed by a review of our budget situation by Dr. Salam Sass. So, Dr. Dalby.
Thank you, Dr. Sheehan. For the record, Kyle Dalby, Chief of Staff and Associate Dean. And I have 60 slides on the history of TMCC. Fortunate for you today, I only brought 12 of them, and I'll go through those pretty quickly. But before we start, how many people here are currently enrolled as a TMCC student? 1, 2, 3. Okay. So, for those of you who aren't, we have late start classes that begin throughout the semester. You can still get enrolled for spring. And please pass the word on to your employees as well. A couple other note here real quick. Dr. Bumpus from AACC mentioned information, community colleges. As this board, as you go out and talk to the community, if you ever need something that you thought maybe you heard him say, or you want to say, how does TMCC fit into that? Just call our office, call Dr. Sheehan's office. We will track it down. We have a great institutional research staff here. We have access to AACC behind the scenes, so we can do that and find information for you. I have a short presentation. One of the things is we do have the 2 students in the class. We have more people here who have taken classes at community colleges, but one of the things I think is important is to actually hear from students. So I have 2 video clips. This is the first one, and they only run maybe a minute or 2. So just the
most gratifying thing that's ever happened in my life. Not only the scholastic education part, which just really made me feel great about myself and successful, but to be hired up this quick, it's really great. It's success beyond measure at this point.
Or 20 seconds, one of the two. So there we go. As you know, Nevada has 4 traditional community colleges. We are the only one with the community left in our name because the others have begun to offer 4-year degrees. When we go down the road of 4-year degrees, we will decide if we should stay at community college. I would hope so, because I don't have to get into logo revision and we can move, just keep everything the same. But we are 4, CSN in Clark County, Vegas area, GBC in Elko, Western down in Carson City, and then TMCC here in Reno. Real brief history, 1969, the community college system, what's interesting is was established by the Nevada legislature. It was then merged into the Board of Regents, and now it's being looked at as a separate piece of the Board of Regents through the shared collaborative. We started at TMCC, for those of you who were here, it actually started as part of Western Nevada Community College out in Stead. And then there was a Carson campus, and we are the outgrowth of the Stead campus. When we hold these meetings quarterly and we have it in the Red Mountain building, you can see how we do things at a community college. We get things done. The Red Mountain building, which since I've been here for 12 years, now has 5 phases, and you can tell when you walk through that building and most likely get lost where one phase starts and the next one begins, because we put things together quickly. We don't do it on the cheap, but we do it at an affordable option, and that's how we built that building. It started as one building, phase 1, where the president's office is, and you can see that came out of Stead, and then now it's grown into this campus, which unfortunately you can't see because there's no windows, but enjoy the view when you leave here today. So all the way to 1979, we were split and we became the two colleges. And the Truckee Meadows Community College name came from the student government, which is, again, depending on the year, very active. This has been a very active year under Stephanie's leadership. So active that for those of you who will be at Directions tomorrow, we'll get to meet our mascot, which is new. And then back in 1979, the students voted to call this Truckee Meadows Community College. This is the class of I think 1973. These are the administrators that put us together. They are standing in front of the student services and information building out at Stead, circa 1973, 1974. I put this up just to show a little fun piece of history. All the way to the left, the fella right here, which in the brown suit, that is Jim Erdley, who was the first president, and the Student Center is named after him. A couple jokes here, Jim. This is the first Transportation Technologies program because there's a horse and a motorcycle. But no, all kidding aside, this group helped build up community colleges as it did across the country. Not this group, but everyone in communities bringing up community colleges. So the mission, vision, values, core themes of TMCC have been outlined, will be presented to the accreditation group. We are in the business of changing lives. That's our vision. We do that through student success, access, and lifelong learning. And how many people here now have taken a TMCC class? Okay, better. Here we go. Good. Okay. I'm currently, the reason I'm standing here and not waving my arms like I normally do, I'm currently enrolled in a non-credit weightlifting class at McQueen, which we had last night. And if I squat, I won't be able to get back up because I am so fatigued. But that's what we do. We do lifelong learning. We do certificates for business programs. We have 5 sites here in Reno. I hope you know that. We have the Dandini campus here, which is pretty much our full-fledged campus. Most students like to take classes here. It has the bookstore, all the services you would traditionally find in a college environment. However, the Applied Technology Center down at Edison Way is the career training. Meadows Center does a lot with adult basic education. We have the Performing Arts Center over at 5th and Keystone. For those of you who haven't seen a show, that's a good option. And then the High Tech Center down at Redfield, which is soon going to be the Health Science Center with all of our nursing programs. Spread out through Reno, accessing the community, providing everything that we can at every location. Today we run just over 11,000 students in credit programs per semester. In state supported, those are where the appropriations come from. When we say state supported, that's what we mean. A student takes a class for credit, we get the tuition and fees, plus the state has an appropriation that comes with that. Rachel will talk more about that next. We also have an additional 9,000 students that take the non-credit class, like my weights class, it's not state supported. Those programs must run on their own and make enough money to fund the instructor, the site, etc., in order for them to go. Again, 5 sites, but interestingly enough, 16 is now, the latest number is 18% of our students are enrolled online only, so that's an option that is becoming more and more valuable to students. When we talk about the community college student, those are the ones that have more things going on in life than a traditional 18-year-old maybe at the university. 1,200 degrees and certificates awarded per year. And then this is kind of interesting. Well, I'll show you another chart, but our median age is 23. We skew a little bit on the female side. 78% of our students are continuing. And then 27% are 12 credits or more, which we call full-time. That means the majority of our students are part-time students. Here's a quick bar graph of our age. The biggest one there, 56%, is the 18 to 24-year-olds. One of the things that we need to do from an enrollment standpoint, as Dr. Bumpus mentioned, enrollments in community colleges are down 4 to 6% nationwide. Notable exceptions are the states that have put funding into it, like Tennessee for free college for their high school students, and California with Prop 30 for community college expansion. Most of the rest are, and they're solving other issues there, access to the four-year pipeline. But here we need to really spread out and get more of the workforce retrained, and you're seeing that in your businesses. And those are anyone who, the bar 3 and over, the middle and over to the right are the 25 plus category. So we're going to be looking at spending more time there trying to get people retrained. When we talk about jobs at Tesla, when we talk about jobs in manufacturing, and the president and vice president say things like these are the $50,000, $60,000 a year jobs, 2 people working, middle class, the return to the middle class, that is exactly what the community college teaches. And that's exactly what we prepare people for. A couple more to go here. So one of the things is that we are different from the university. And when we work with legislators, community people, we find a lot of people have gone through the university track. There has to be total flexibility, day, night, weekend, online classes. We have to have support services to tell people. Some of the people you see in the room here are TMCC staff. They deal with programs to tell people and show them ways that they can do it. How do you do it with a family, taking classes, have to pay for it, have to work, etc., especially when we go into those populations that are not the traditional 18-year-old population. That's what makes our students different. And we're responsive to the workforce needs. When somebody says something, most likely Mr. Kazmierski and EDON would say, hey, we need this, right, for this new company. We can provide that and hopefully and get that running with the support of the community.
I think I've been more successful having attended classes here and earning a degree here. Without this program, I don't know where I'd be today. I certainly wouldn't be as successful as I've been. I make a fairly decent living. Starting a family, I've been able to buy a house, and I have a lot of things in life that people are looking for, and I view them as being directly related to the experience here.
So Mr. Creelman went through our Diesel Tech program, very successful, also now teaches for us part-time. And so it's very interesting. That was in 2002 when he went to school, and he just shot that for us last year, 2 years ago. Last slide here is the, I think, somebody mentioned this in the introductions, the skilled workforce. The middle graph, the red, shows middle skill jobs in Nevada. The orange shows the people trained for those jobs. So you can see there's a gap there. Depending on how you size up this graph, it's a 3 to 4 or 5% gap. And so we need to be training people for those middle skill jobs. And that's exactly, again, what we do as part of our mission. So with that, if there's not any questions, I will give up the podium to my friend from Seattle, me being from New England, very happy with Sunday's game. Sorry, Rachel. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Dalby. And now Dr. Rachel Solmsos will give us a quick overview, and hopefully on our next agenda we'll have a deeper dive, but this will give you at least an introduction to our budget issues.
All right. Good morning. For the record, Rachel Solmsos, Vice President for Finance and Admin Services here in Truckee, Meadows. Just like Dr. Bumpus, I do wanted to share with you that I am a recipient of a first-generation college student, my grandmother, who in the Philippines, one of the things we inherited under U.S. occupation is education. And she's got her degree in a teacher's college, which is a vocational school. And of course now, and among our generation, our family, we're professionals, and certainly education has made a difference. So my commitment has been to be part of the system. I've been in the system for longer than a decade, and with colleagues, we're here to certainly promote social mobility and serve our community. Okay, so I will provide you some overview of sort of our resource allocation funding model, how it's influenced nationally, certainly in the state, and how we do here at TMCC. And like Kyle, I could have 60 to 100 slides, but you're fortunate that we only have a few today. So starting with, in simple terms, our financial models really build from a lot of community support. Starting from the sources of funds, we do get them from state allocation. Some other states, they also have local allocation, but for Nevada, it's state funded. And then, of course, the student pay their portion, and if they're out of state, of course, they pay their full board, which we call here Nevada tuition. But in most other states, they're called the tuition. And then, at the same time, it's a community college. That means there's a lot of community support. And this particular college is very entrepreneurial, so we have a lot of enterprising activities from grants and contracts. So those are typically your main source of funds. Where we use it, certainly for personal costs, a big part of it, of course, is academic focus, our faculty costs, full-time and part-time, and all the staff that supports the students. And of course, there's institutional support, from the office of the president, my office, and all that. That's certainly a big part of how we use the funds. And operating expenses. We have buildings to maintain. We have staff that help maintain that. Okay, so you've seen one state, you've seen them all. So here's how it looks on a national basis. And it's actually a trend. You'll see a similar trend of where the funding source is coming from. A big bulk is, the gray portion is the tuition. The light blue portion is the state or local appropriation. And then most community colleges, of course, get some local support through grants and contracts, and you see that in the darker blue. And sadly, since 2000, so what is it now, 2 decades, you can see how there's some erosion of public, state, and local allocation and an increase in tuition and fees, with still some support from grants and contracts. How does it look like here at TMCC? So here we go in 2000. You see our federal grants, contracts, and local support at 24, going up to 32%. Again, with our president, we've become really more entrepreneurial and leveraging that community support. You'll see the state allocation going down between 2000 and 2014. And, of course, an increased share of the pie for our students. So challenges in terms of funding. At community colleges, and this happens nationally, we are seeing that declining state or local support. A lot of it is continued public erosion, state allocation of public funding. And of course, nationally, we also seen there's less state support than four-year university. We are certainly a cheaper alternatives, but at the same time, as allocation, we do get less support. But at the same time, we serve students with diverse educational and social needs. We're open access, we're not selective. And so getting the right funding to make sure that we support what we would consider for some our high-touch students, becomes really sort of that challenge of leveraging what resources we have. And of course, lately, this push in terms of funding to completion. It used to be we're funded when the students come to the door. Now they have to complete or else we won't get funded. So this is our new normal. It started actually in July 2012, the new funding formula. So at the state level here in Nevada, we're now funded two ways. First, our students, what we call the weighted student credit hours. That means our students, not only should they come and enroll at TMCC, they have to complete the course. So it's not if they withdraw or they have an F grade for non-attendance, we call them FNs, we won't get paid. But if they complete the course, then that is counted and will get funded. In addition, there's a performance pool. A part of our state allocation is carved out. It started with 5%, so now we'll be at 10%. Next year's 15%, and then in 2018 it'll be 20% of our funding, and we're given targets, and we have to earn that money back. So 20% for TMCC, it's about $6 million. We have to, there's a target on how many students receive associate's degree, how many students receive certificates, how many of them transfer, how many of them move from developmental education to college ready. All those add up to a point. We're given those points. If we earn those points, we get to keep our money. If we don't, it's prorated and we lose the money. Last year, we actually lost We were at 99%, so we were 1% short. We lost $12,000. Good news, this coming year, we've actually exceeded our target, so we not only kept our money, but we earned our $12,000 back. So we're hoping this trend continues on later.
Thank you very much. And can we spend just a little more time on the new normal? Because I know you have other slides, but this is very different for us. This new formula implemented within 12 months from start to end, and that's a very short period of time to implement anything that's new in this arena. What we didn't know is what unintended consequences would arise. And what Dr. Solomsas has been talking about is what we've found is losses in the unintended consequences. And I think you're going to have a little more information on that, but I want to make sure council members understand this because this is a critical part of how we're going to be able to serve workforce needs in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Sheehan. And in fact, my next slide talks about the effect of the formula funding. So with the new normal of the weighted student credit hours that they have to complete the course, of course, our performance funding, the first time we implemented, there's really not additional money given in Nevada. So it's the same piece of pie among universities and community colleges. So the first impact is there's a redistribution of the allocation. And you'll see right here, that bottom table right there. One more. You'll see how some of the funding actually shifted from the north to the south, because that's where most of the enrollment and weighted student credit hours. For TMCC, we lost about 9.43% or $2.8 million then. Now, there was another adjustment that's happening that will be implemented here, what we call the FNs. Failure for non-attendance. So that adjustment will result, again, for another decline of $970,000 for TMCC. And if you look at the chart, with the FNs, which is expected, community college have more FNs than university, so money from community college now are going to be shifted to the universities. And this too certainly has something that we've been managing for the last 2 years and will be managing again this coming 2 years. Question?
Well, and recently, Rachel, we're reestablishing our budget reduction committee to meet, and do you want to talk about the new target? It's between 1.5 and 2 million reduction going into the next biennium.
Yes. So Dr. Sheehan actually established a budget reduction. Well, we've been doing budget reduction since 2009, and there's been a committee then too. But last year we started a committee because we were faced with another 2.2 million reduction. This year, the first meeting of that committee they will have to reconvene because we're faced between 1.5 to 2 million, again, because of the adjustments that I just shared with you.
You know, I'm not quite clear on that. I understand the FN's the 970,000. What was the 2.8 million due to?
The 2.8. So when we started the formula funding and shifted from enrollment funding based on FTE to now to completed courses. So again, there's two factors there. First is there's more students enrolled in the South. That's where the growth is. If you look at it in terms of Nevada during this period where we implemented it. So there is that one part, and then of course you'll also see that the universities certainly have more completers than community colleges. I hope that answered your question, Michelle. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did our weighted student credit hours go up? Did we have more or did we have less?
So for the coming fiscal period, we're based on past performance, and it's based on fiscal year 14 weighted student credit hours compared to fiscal year 12, which is the base year. So from 14 to 12, we actually went down. Our enrollment declined.
Okay.
So that's about a 400,000 impact. The FNs is a different fiscal impact, though 970, and then on top of that, we've experienced, and it's a national trend, a decline in enrollment, so we're hit by another 400,000. So, in essence, really comparing us from 2008, where we've seen sort of that economic downfall, and couple that with the implementation of the formula funding, CSN lost about 9% of their state allocation. Northern Nevada, so that's the three of us, GBC, Western, and TMCC, we're down about a total of 36%. And at TMCC, we've been down 32% when it comes to state allocation. Compare that to our enrollment, CSN is down 9%. Again, this is a national trend. All of Northern Nevada colleges is at 8%, and TMCC declined 11%. So though our enrollment declined 11%, our state allocation has gone down by 32%. So really, the new normal, the good thing about the new normal is really a change in focus here at TMCC. Now, student success really means we have to complete our students and help promote completion, and the financial incentive is there as well. So it's helped us maintain financial stability. So what our focus has been on student success. We look very closely into making sure we offer quality programs that meet student demand, and there's a lot of enrollment management efforts and strategic enrollment strategies that we're employing that's under the leadership of Kyle Dalby. We also help students complete courses. We have several initiatives now under Dr. Nichols and, of course, our faculty that really get into and help students know, why are you withdrawing? What can we do for you to persist, to stay in your class? Of course, continued efforts in helping students earn degrees. We've had several new certificate programs and opportunities to help students meet that. And at the same time, we want to be efficient. So we try to manage our costs. A bulk of it, of course, it's our faculty costs in terms of student-faculty ratio. So we're looking very closely with that in addition to the kind of facilities and spaces that we can offer. And with that, I open it if there's any additional questions. Yes, Nancy.
Yes, the question I have is forward-looking and what the enrollment numbers look like with regards to the next couple of years as far as the forecast with the changing economy. And along with that, what does that look like from a forecast of additional staff that will be required in order to support that? So short term, we have a budget that we have to balance in order to move forward. And a big part of that is really looking into the enrollment in the next biennium, or if not, even extend into 4 years. We do still see the natural decline in enrollment, and of course, looking at some of our market, like the Washoe County School District, where the high school students are also declining. We're trying to be conservative and probably estimate maybe another 2 years of decline in enrollment. But at what level? 1%, 2%. But with that, we also wanted to anticipate, the kind of programs that we need to provide, for instance, on Tesla and all that. And so we have to kind of also give adjustments to that. Our institutional researchers are probably in a better position to, Elena Bodnova, to actually say how we're going to project our enrollment. But right now, in terms of financial planning, we're being conservative and anticipating maybe another 1 or 2% decline. Unless we're able to maintain that, and that would be good news for us.
Now, we're looking at avenues for increases, and so the space utilization has been a big issue. How we redesign course offerings to maximize enrollment is something we're definitely looking at to counteract the decline that we've had. We're also trying to figure out how to manage the FN issue, which you have seen the financial impact of that. And with our population, it's transient. It's not like the 4-year population. So we are in this period of transitioning into a funding formula that isn't a really good one-size-fits-all. And so we're hoping to be able to make the point that community college students are very different than university students, and hopefully we'll see an adjustment of the formula in the future. For now, it is very much supported by our system, by our governor, so we have to look at what do we do in order to deal with something that's new to us. So if the FN is new to us, having the enrollment drop be our total responsibility, that's new to us. In the past, there was a 3-year rolling average that softened it, the blow, if you had a dip in enrollment. Today, we have to be good stewards of every single dollar, because if we drop an enrollment, that's our responsibility. We have to figure that out.
Yes, Mike.
The question of enrollment clearly drives your budget to some degree. And you mentioned Tesla as an increasing demand. In our numbers, we're reflecting the equivalent of 3 Teslas in the next 5 years. Many in the advanced manufacturing sector, but a lot of technology and others too. I would expect, with our connection to the businesses and the need for training, a fairly significant increase in enrollment. If you get that increase in enrollment, let's say, 3% a year, 5% a year, I think it could be even higher. What does that do to your actual funding?
Certainly, it will make a huge difference into the financial plan because, again, enrollment drives a couple of things. Enrollment drives student fees, and at the same time, enrollment drive what we will call weighted student credit hours. If those enrollment also complete courses, then the state would fund us.
So where do they get the money?
The students
The
or
state.
the state? Well, we're part of the huge Nevada State Appropriation Authority, and it's provided to NSHE, and then NSHE comes up with the formula funding distribution. I think for NSHE, with the universities and the colleges, we're at about 500, $500,000, and I can get that information. But typically, the state, through the legislative process, do provide an appropriation to higher education through the Nevada system of higher education. And then NSHE, with all its members and the Board of Regents, then determine an allocation formula.
So our piece of the pie doesn't change. The state's got a certain amount allocated. It's just our piece would get bigger at the cost of somebody else.
Yes, if it's redistributed. The pie actually has changed. NSHE's pie has diminished over time because of the economic downturn. But when we started the new formula funding, the distribution of that pie within the system changed. And you see the unintended consequence. Funds, that pie, part of the funds went to the South, and then part of the pie went to the university instead of the community colleges. Yes.
Could I just ask, one of the challenges I see, and I just want to verify it, is if we are wanting to, seeing the increases that Mike just said, to prepare for those, where are we going? We're going to have to find out how do we get the funding to prepare the curricula, which we're going to have before we're going to have, the money coming in from the new students or the higher income. So that is one of the big questions. Is that money going to be available, or where do we find those funds?
Well, at this time, it's not available. And so we are going to have that gap. And that's why a lot of states have decided to invest. In California, I think Dr. Dalby mentioned, Governor Brown has a budget proposal that would fund community colleges 8% increase and the universities 4% increase, understanding that the universities have a lesser role in this mid-skills training area. Right now, we're kind of in a crunch, and so we don't have funding to do what you said.
It's a sustainable funding source. I mean, we have done some, but it was a difficult undertaking for like grants and contracts, and typically grants and contracts are short term. What we're missing is sort of that sustainable funding source, like a research grant or a workforce development grant that can jumpstart what would typically will be a very expensive program. If you start an advanced manufacturing, those equipments are not cheap. And so, we've been fortunate to have some community support through grants and contracts and donations, but those are not necessarily sustainable and compared to what other universities are getting, it's a small amount. And it takes quite a bit from certainly the institutions to pursue that and community to kind of provide that support. We need something more sustainable and ongoing to get us
I think
continuity.
That's a really good point that Dr. Solmsas is making, and it's a big worry for us at the institution. We've been very fortunate in the grants that we've received, and Dr. Bumkus mentioned the TAC grants, and that's jump-started some programs. After those funds, complete, that cycle of funding completes, we don't have a way to continue unless we have this incredible increase in enrollment that then pumps up our bottom line. We've got a problem as each of those grants goes to its final stage.
One last question on funding that maybe I'm not getting it, but if all the education institutions increase their enrollment by 10%, does anyone get any more money?
There could be. There's some complexity to the formula. It depends on where the enrollment grows. In our formula funding distribution, certainly engineering students get more funding than an English student. So there's those differentiation between disciplines.
Let me
and
make
then
it
also,
easier.
yes.
Let me make it easier for you. If it's everyone increases their engineering students by 10%, does anyone get any more money?
Only if there's a rate increase, but yes, not on the volume.
So the answer is no. So
Thank you.
fight against each other.
Thank you. Oh, one more question.
But just one question. So I think what I'm hearing is, yes, we would want as TMCC to increase our enrollments as compared to the other institutions in the state, but maybe more importantly, how do we make the pie bigger?
Yes.
I mean, and whether that's through grants or state appropriations, growing the pie is probably the most and quickest benefit.
Yes. And of course, enrollment also, aside from the state allocation, enrollment does bring student fees. So each of the institutions is able to certainly generate more revenue through the fees that they charge the students.
Okay, thank you. I think some very good questions. Thank you, Dr. Salomsas. In your package, you have the TMCC Strategic Master Plan. And this is a critical part of the assessment of the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities. That's our accrediting body. We will have a visit in October, coming up in the fall. And what we will have to demonstrate to our commission is that we say we do certain things, and in the past you could say we are very good at what we do. That is no longer okay. You have to say how it is you achieve your mission. You have to break it down into your core themes. You have to put your objectives together, and then you have to measure them. So you can see our measurements and where we are in trying to do the best job that we possibly can. This will be reviewed when we have our visit. So that's a 2-second review of accreditation, which we take so seriously. Without accreditation, an institution cannot distribute financial aid. There's a huge impact to our students. And so accreditation is an issue that we take very, very, very seriously. Accreditors also look at how financially stable are you. So that balanced budget is absolutely a mandate. So our committee will be working hard to make sure that we are going into the next biennium with a balanced budget, which will mean some substantially difficult decisions, because we'll be cutting back 1.5 at a minimum to up to $2 million. There's also an impact statement, impact sheet, so that gives you a little bit more information about the sites that we have. Both of the PowerPoints are part of your packet, so if you have questions later on that come up as you go over this information, please feel free to contact me or either Dr. Dalby or Dr. Salomsas. At this time, I'd like to move to the election of TMCC Institutional Advisory Council officers. Our first order of business is to select a chair. Do we have any nominations?
President Sheehan, Brad Woodring for the record. At this time, I'd like to nominate Collie Hutter as chairperson for this body.
I second.
We have a nomination and a second. Before we take a vote, would you be willing to accept this nomination?
Dr. Shearing, I would be honored to accept the nomination.
Okay, let me call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we take a roll call vote?
Mashanisquaga?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Marissa?
Yes.
Michael? Mike?
Oh, yes. Aye.
Mike Kazmersky, sorry.
Say Mike and Michael will both say
Mike,
yes.
okay.
Yes. Aye.
Nancy McCormick?
Just say yes, Nancy.
Just say yes.
John Thurman.
Yes.
And Brad Woodring.
Yes.
Ayes have it.
Okay, thank you. I think we have unanimous decision. Thank you, Collie.
Thank you very
Yay.
much. Great honor.
Thank you.
All right, our next order of business is to select a vice chair. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
Dr. Sheehan, Brad Woodring again for the record. At this time, I'd like to nominate Mishana Squaga as vice chair of this body.
Second.
We have a nomination and a second. Before we take a vote, Ms. Shana Squaga, would you be willing to accept this role?
Yes.
Okay, we have a nomination and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think that's unanimous. Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
There was no lobbying done outside of this.
All right. So what I have also in your packets is a first look at what meetings might be expected. So I want to thank Nadine for putting together what I will be presenting to the Chancellor as potential next meetings for us. So we're going to try to work from the board meeting, which is the Board of Regents meetings are already set. But we can't set our meetings until we know what the meeting dates are going to be for the standing committee on community colleges. And so we've put some approximations down there, and then we'll be back to you by the end of this week or beginning of next week to let you know what we have in mind or what the system has in mind for those meetings. What I have also in your packet is the legislative agenda. If you would like to take a look at that, that is our system priorities of how we will go forward, and with one voice expressing what our priorities are. And so you can see that in the base budget, there's the restoration of furloughs, including benefits, and this has been a real issue for us to have as many furlough days as we have had. It's not a very compelling strategy for recruitment when you tell someone you're trying to recruit that by the first day of employment they're going to take reduction in pay. So we're thrilled that this is going to be in our base budget. It's a pass-through, so it may look as if our budget is increased. It actually isn't increased. It comes in and it goes out. Our wonderful classified staff have really struggled. They are those with the least compensation and often take 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And so this has been really hard for them not to have their step increases. So we're really excited about that. This last bullet that's there, that's talking about caseload growth, would help everyone, and it would soften the blow to us substantially. But you can see it's a big number. It would give an additional $5 per weighted student credit hour, if I'm correct. And Dr. Somsas is nodding yes. Okay, so that would be wonderful. We would love to see that. You can see there's an item for bridge funding that is a substantial one. This is a big issue for northern community colleges. As you see, GBC and WNC are in desperate need of what is called bridge or mitigation funding. Without that funding, they are really going to struggle to make it through biennium. They would be just a shell of themselves without this funding. It then brings, if they can get that funding, then it still is only temporary. So that's a huge dilemma. Also suffering a substantial loss is DRI. So our colleagues at DRI, GBC, and WNC are very much in need of having this funding continue. And you can see the other priorities that are listed. Now, under other state budgets and interim activity, there is the hope, and you can see those last bullets, that there will be dollars for Workforce Development Fund, and that's at $6 million. What the chances are for that, we don't know, but you can see it's on our priority list. Need-based financial aid, definitely desperately needed, and then STEM Workforce Challenge Grant. That would be $3.5 million. So those are small numbers when you look at our whole system in terms of community colleges. Those last two amounts, $6 million and $3.5, would be dedicated to community colleges. Together, I can tell you that our colleagues in the South could utilize every single one of those dollars and not have misused a single dime. That's how great the need is. But that is what's on the docket as a request going forward in this session for all of us to compete for. So it's going to be difficult for us to see much gain there. So we're holding out some level of hope, at least for the bridge funding for GBC and WNC and DRI. And it would be fabulous if we could get the caseload growth, which would help all institutions, and that would make the pie bigger, as Mike, you were talking about. We need a bigger pie. It's very small right now, and so we're just rearranging the dollars within ourselves. And that's the dilemma of the funding formula. So when the funding formula implemented, the system as a whole was at a almost $200 million reduction from where it was in 2006, 2007. And so now in the smaller pie, you interject a funding formula, and it shifts dollars based on population. You can see where we're at a significant disadvantage. Okay, so at this point in time, if there are no questions, I'd like to talk about what would be part of our next agenda. And I had mentioned that I think we should start with our students and who they are. And we've got 4 experts as ex officio members of the council, so I'm hoping that you will want to hear from each one of them. What is the thought on that?
Absolutely.
Okay, I heard an absolutely.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, great. Okay, so for the next agenda, we will ask our 4 wonderful colleagues to address the student profile, and I will ask and help with putting that together our Dean of Student Services, if she would help in that arena. So Estella, if you would join that effort of looking at our student profile, and with some statistics, you'll hear, I hope, from Elena Baknova. Elena, would you wave so they can see where you are? Okay, so we track students down to, we can tell you how well a student will do if they are 18 years old and they enroll in a developmental math course online, what their success rate will be. I mean, that's how definitive our data is, because we have an incredible institutional research office that is led by Elena Bagnova. So we'd like for you to see some of the statistics. And you heard from earlier on about iPads. What is that? And how does that work? And what do we look like? And how are we judged among other institutions? So I'd like, if you're interested, to drill down on what is iPads, how does it work, and how well is TMCC doing?
Yes.
Okay, a yes to that
yes.
as an agenda.
Even just what the acronym is.
And I always get it wrong.
Thank you.
That is Elena's world. And it really helps us to analyze what are the kinds of things that are needed for our students. We've got to have data to make decisions. The other issue that's on the front burner for us is what's going to happen with our accreditation. How well prepared are we for that? When are our reports due? What are we expecting? And what's the cycle? So would you like to hear a little bit more about, because actually all of you will be involved, probably get phone calls and emails from the accrediting evaluation team when they are on deck in October. So it would be important for you to be up to speed when they ask questions about core themes and how we're evaluating our progress.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's what we can present, and I would like to keep that to only half of the meeting so that you have time for discussion. What do you think? Chair Hutter.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think the more time we have for discussion is good because very often, and I think a lot of us sit on the same boards, and we spend a lot of time learning, which is great, but we really have very little time to actually formulate as a group how we can really contribute. We spend a lot of time hearing about what other people are doing or other things, but we don't actually effectively do what the group is being asked to do, and so I think that's a good division of time. And if I might ask at this time for an agenda item continuing on from the budgeting, I think that's something that it took me almost 4 years for Dr. Lucy to instruct me on how that worked. And so the more we understand it, and also I would be really very interested in learning if we can actually see what the gap is in the funding, since we're talking about workforce development. What is the gap in how much money we have? Do we have any money to develop the coursework that we're going to need to support this? And look at, so we have a number, we have a goal. What are we trying, what's the gap before all these people show up to take courses that we haven't prepared for?
Excellent.
Dr. Sheehan, I think there's another piece that we need to be hearing from, and Mike has alluded to it several times, is the number of jobs that we're looking over these next years, and that's part and parcel to Nancy's work out with the existing businesses. I think we need to also hear about what are these job skills that we're going to be looking at. In order to build these curriculums, we have to know and understand what assets we have and where the gaps are. You know, as we're talking about businesses becoming more involved on the community college and more enrollment, are we prepared for those skill sets that we're going to have to train? And I think we need to know and understand what those jobs are going to be. That's fallen to the industry sector councils at the higher level, but we need to drill that down really to us so that our deans of our different schools know and understand what they're going to need to be teaching to.
You know, I think that's a primary purpose of this group is to tell us, because they're always out there searching, but it's anecdotal. It's not, at the highest level of workforce needs. So maybe we can have an EDON presentation.
Well, I would suggest that what we're asking for is really to start figuring that out, because there is no, dial 911 Nancy and all of a sudden the list pops out. That ain't happening. What's happening is the need changes daily, and so as a group, I would offer a discussion item to say, okay, how do we figure out what that need is? And it's not EDON, it's not, it's a much broader discussion, and maybe there are players that need to be engaged so that we can, as a entity, start to lay out the specifics. We can tell you where the jobs are and what those generally manufacturing, logistics, we can give you the big numbers. It's that next phase, that next level of visibility that we can't necessarily provide you, and in some cases it may require a physical survey or inventory or discussion, or that's really where we're missing right now, is nobody is talking in a way to say, okay, HR person, you've had no problem hiring the forklift driver, but what about all these other jobs? How long have they been vacant, and how do we, that's John Perrell and Job Connect and all these other people that are trying to help fill these jobs have bits and pieces of information that have not been consolidated into one. Okay, here's the list of people we need, and here are the skills we need. So I would say that's not going to be a one meeting discussion. I think it's an ongoing challenge.
Okay.
Just kind of piggybacking on what Mike is saying, the state and the INSHE have gotten together just recently and actually purchased burning glass.
Burning glass.
Okay. And we're not sure how soon that's all going to roll out and how soon all that will go active. But one of the things that it does is that it not only takes all the jobs that are put into the system by employers, but it goes out and spiders all jobs in the area, and they can put whatever parameters on that they want. The system does eliminate those duplications, so you can really get a good handle on those jobs that are posted and open and people are looking for employees. The second part of that is the system also gathers and evaluates all current resumes for job seekers. So if they're using that system and if they touch the system through the Department of Employment Training and Rehabilitation or through any of our service providers and potentially through the college and community college system, we can start gathering those resumes. The system will evaluate the resumes as it compares to the job listing and the skills needed and start identifying where skills gaps are down to the actual individual level. And I know from some prior experience with it, we can also aggregate those numbers up so we get kind of a handle on if we need 1,000 welders, where's the shortage, and so on and so forth. So I think that would be a good subject to also investigate a little bit more and maybe have somebody present at the next meeting to talk in more depth about the details of that product and how it can benefit us.
I know it's just rolling out. So
Yes,
by
I mean,
the
we're
time
right
of the
at the
next
edge.
meeting, and it's going to be a wonderful tool.
Yeah.
Then I think the discussions were they weren't sure when.
Yeah, and we don't know when right now. That's one of the big ifs.
Carly, go ahead. I had another comment, but go ahead.
I'm sorry. But the sector councils definitely are, that is a definite resource because they are working the middle skills jobs, and that's where they're starting to see a lot of homogenation and transferability across many industries, and we're now seeing the sector councils, logistics, manufacturing, aerospace, defense, are really coming together with one, looking at exactly what we're asking. What are the job skills? What are the job descriptions look like? And so there's a lot of work being done there that I think is going to be a very valuable asset.
Madam Chair.
Two colleagues comment on that. There are a couple of industry sector councils that are just light years ahead of others, and some that are fledgling. So I'm just going to ask, I'm going to poll the group and see if there's interest in this. Because we're talking regionally of Northern Nevada and what we're seeing happening here, would there be interest of having, because I know some of our deans have been out there and they're talking to, and some of our deans are actually practitioners in the real world, or not deans, but instructors are practitioners in the real world. Would it be of interest of this group to have someone from an industry in manufacturing, so to speak, an actual business person come in and talk about those skill gaps that they're seeing that they're not able to find? I'm just asking. I mean, we could. It's pretty simplistic to find someone to come in and talk to that point.
I'd be careful to have an individual company because you have every single company has a different set of needs.
True.
And
They perceive
what we need is the consolidated needs. So unless we get them all in here,
maybe through the associations.
the association in a consolidated way could really be helpful.
Okay.
We see that a lot. We'll go in one company and they need 10 of these right now, and we have 10 somewhere. And so we help kind of connect some dots. And others, you may only need 2 in 500 companies, so you need 1,000 of something, but because that wasn't their priority, you don't know there's a need.
That's a good point, Mike.
Madam Chair, just as a point of clarification, the presentation that you're going to give us on the statistics, will that include, because of our funding formula and we don't get funding for students that either drop out or fail the class, does that include a data set on that? And more importantly, why are they not completing and why are they not making it a passing grade? I mean, that's...
Okay, I think there are 2 separate pieces to this. There's a budget piece where we'll do a deeper dive into how that works. And then the successes or lack thereof based on iPads is, I think, what we will ask of Elena Baknova, and also some of the characteristics of our students which our panel of ex officios can go into that. But, you know, as a general answer, life happens to our students.
Absolutely.
Okay. And you heard the majority of them are part-time because they're balancing a full-time job. Most of our students are working 30 hours. So it's harder, and you compare that to a university student, and often they're not working at all. So it is really, then you add lack of preparation to trying to keep a full-time job. Now you're trying to put college into it. It's less likely that we're going to have students complete than at the university. But we'll delve into that at the next meeting. Would that give you?
I'm just looking for commonality. Is there a common denominator amongst that population that we could potentially address to help them achieve success? That's where I was going with that line of questioning.
What? Yes.
For the record, Elena Volnova, Institutional Research at TMCC. You have to go to the mic.
To the mic.
Elena, you want to be on the record.
Elena Bobnova, Institutional Research at TMCC. This is a complex question that you're asking because there's really a variety of different reasons. There are some commonalities that we can address just to kind of provide you the highlights. And just give you maybe some basic demographic information on the students that kind of identifies them as possibly at risk of dropping out. And I'm sure in the future we will probably spend some time giving you a sense of the types of support programs that we have here to address those very same points and kind of preemptively support students before they actually make a decision to drop out. But yes, absolutely.
I don't want to create work. I was just looking for something kind of global high flight.
We are addressing it, and this, based on the new funding formula, it certainly is a very big factor for us that we have to pay attention to in ways that are probably very new, and we have put in place lots of different initiatives to address the withdrawal rates of our students. We conducted a survey to understand some of the reasons, so all of that information we'll be happy to share.
Thank you.
You know, I just have a question and maybe a comment. I think what I struggle with on this initial conversation is that there's kind of a short term and a long term. I mean, long term, you'd like to do everything correctly, you know, study the situation and really develop, again, a strategic plan moving out over the years. But the reality of it is we just started a legislative session where education is clearly going to be front and center. You know, what they end up getting, who knows. And it just seems like a missed opportunity for us who are just getting started not to be able to really take advantage of that. And maybe, you know, I don't know exactly what wiggle room there is within NSHE's lobbying efforts and what they're going for, but are there opportunities there that we should be looking for to get funds or at least be part of that conversation? The community college, as we talked about, was kind of left out of the conversation, at least in the address.
Yes.
Are there opportunities there for us? You know, I often find it doesn't take a lot of money sometimes to really catapult you further. I hate to lose this opportunity of the next 90 days of, again, trying to find a way to, whether it's connecting with K-12 on some of these technical programs. There are the things that we know today are going to be on the plan for the next few years that we can just take a shot at. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm making that clear. But that, to me, that's like imminent. I mean, it just would be a shame if we let this go by and then we're 2 years down the road again before we have another funding cycle. And maybe this takes care of it. It's hard to tell. It's a pretty flat piece of paper. So I'd like to just throw that out there as much as a comment as, asking for your input on that.
Well, and there are three things that help. You know, the weighted student credit increase will help us. Pulling community colleges out specifically, you see what the priorities are. And the most desperate situation is GBC and WNC and DRI. So it's hard for us to push forward when, we know that they're such at risk. I think a best opportunity would be how are we coordinating with the funding that's being received or could be received by K-12, because it's designated for workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we do, and we could show that transition. If somehow we can move in that direction of utilizing, leveraging the dollars that are received by K-12. I don't know what their feeling would be about us, entering that discussion, but it seems unlikely that just a high school level of preparation is going to make an individual ready for the workforce. They're going to need some level of post-secondary education, and that's what we provide. But there isn't anything in this agenda that gives us any assistance other than the weighted student credit hour. That will help a lot.
My sense is that when you go to the legislature, you have one voice at Nishi, and that the community college voice is muted to some degree by the larger voice of support for education or higher education. And so Maria and others have no ability to come in and say, we want a bigger piece. It's the larger piece that needs to grow. So I think the challenge for all of us is in some way to lobby or get involved with any way to influence the legislature to let them know that, yes, the governor's message is important and education is a priority, and there are parts of education that make up the system, K through 12, community college, and the university level, and they all need to be addressed.
I guess I'm also looking at our message to NSHE.
Yes.
And
yes.
what specifics we give them that hopefully help expand their messaging when they go to the governor, when they go to the legislature, because I understand that we all have to fit within the pyramid of NSHE. You don't just go out, do your own thing. But, what are those opportunities that we can start promoting up the chain even when we report back to NSHE?
Yeah, I think just our view, and we're in the job creation world, I think the community college is not education, but workforce development. And K through 12 is education, although it does lead to workforce development. And higher education has some workforce development components, but the one that meets the immediate workforce needs, the one that has the greatest ability to take our graduates from K through 12 and transition them into a quality job, is that workforce development piece that makes up the center. And so the conversation is education, and we forget the workforce development piece of the pie sometimes.
Well, I think that workforce development starts younger. You've got to get these kids to where at least they're exposed to opportunities from, middle school, 6th grade, where they start. So there's a piece of it that...
Oh, yeah. They're all blended.
Mm-hmm. And that's the piece that we really want to work on, is that transition from high school to college. And it's worked beautifully with the TMCC High School. We would love to see a technical high school that replicates the success of TMCC High School. And that's a leveraging of dollars that we think would be attractive. There's only so much of the pie, and how much can we do? So if we could leverage those dollars and they could be shared in some way, we could be helpful.
And just a quick comment on the current Workforce Investment Act and how those dollars coming to the state are going to shift from an emphasis on in-school programs for youth to an out-of-school emphasis when it comes to delivery of services. Kind of the sad part is from just that act, the state receives about $30 million total. About a third of that, or $10 million, is earmarked for youth services, which then can be used in those out-of-school youth programs. Statewide, then that split is about 75% to the south, about 25% to the north. So when you really get down to it, it's a fairly small percentage of those dollars that'll help with that bridge from high school. The other kind of difficult part in that is that those youth need to be low income in order to receive those services. So it does eliminate a fair amount of those. They have increased some of the potential for eligibility based on areas and concentrations of poverty by zip code that we're still waiting on some final regulations. So, yeah, we're all for that helping with the transition and stuff, but we're a really small piece of the pie right now. A bigger piece, probably the CEP program, the Career Enhancement Program, which is the unemployment insurance dollars that come back into the system for workforce development. Although those aren't necessarily targeting youth, but they would target youth that are out of school and 18 or older.
Heading up our legislative effort at TMCC is Dr. Dalby. Did you have a comment?
I do have a comment. Kyle Dalby, Truckee Meadows Community College. One of the things on my plate is legislative affairs, and acting as the liaison with the system office. And they've asked us, and we've worked with them on the priorities. However, getting this message out is tricky. Even if you talk about community colleges in general and just say community colleges, people think they know what a community college does, but they tend to lump us with the higher ed system, which means we're part of UNR. And the segmentation that Mr. Kazmierski was saying, where we are the training element, is easily seen when we look at programs like the video clip that talked about geothermal. The university trains the people to be the scientists to find out where to drill $1 million hole. We train the people that work in the plant that goes over that hole. That's the difference. That's the difference in what we do. We are the training. Now, one of the opportunities that will come up, and I can invite this board, is, for example, we have opportunities to testify when you can come before the legislature, and they will say, we need people to speak on behalf of business, and this is the perfect group because it's totally within your realm to say, I'm a member of the Institutional Advisory Board at TMCC, I'm a community member, I own this business, I work at this organization, and this is why it's important. So there's a couple dates, and we'll get that out to you. The big one is March 2nd is the Education Day at the legislature, so we'll bring more of that forward as we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dalby. Chair Hutter, have you heard enough to give you some sense of where you might go with input? And so on the 26th, our chair will be at the Board of Regents Committee on Community Colleges, and you will have a chance as an ex officio member to make a comment. And so if you have ideas that you want to share that you think about after this meeting, then please contact our chair. We are at the conclusion of our meeting at this time, but we have a takeaway lunchbox for you. So if you want to grab and go, you can. We can stay on our timeline. If I haven't spoken with you individually, I would love to have that opportunity to spend some time with you, to go through some of the information that you have seen and to answer more questions. I think there are wonderful agenda items that we have come up with. I think it's going to be a full agenda for our next meeting. And you should know by the beginning of next week what the agenda schedule will be.
Excellent. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So would you like to conclude the meeting?
I think the gentleman made an excellent motion.
So. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I thought we were on that path, yes.
Okay.
Second.
There's a second? Okay.
Cheers, Colin.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have 2 slides.
Thank you.